So Octoyber is a 31-day photo challenge during the month of October. The ACBA podcast and Poncheesy, they put out this list of themes.
It is the 18th of September, 2025. My first day of working on Octoyber. Yesterday I helped my mom with some yard work, and then I was up all night working on getting stuff out and ready for today, so I got no sleep whatsoever. This is my life. This is the hole that I hibernate in. I got a fresh, pristine list of themes for the month.
Each day in the month of October has a theme attached to it. Here, I'll put some examples from previous months of October on screen from previous years. It's something that I participate in every year. You don't have to do every single day on the theme list, but I personally like to. You know, the way I like to do October, because they give us the theme list about 2 months in advance, is I get started as soon as possible on coming up with ideas. I make a Word document, I write down an idea for every theme, and then I assign like a level of priority. You know, some photos it's important to get done earlier than others, so I'll jump around, and this video is going to be in the order that I shot the photos in, not the order I post them in. At each segment, pay attention to the theme number and also to the date that I'm taking the photo on. Just those two numbers will tell you where we are in the month, but I'm just going to do it in the order that I shot the photos.
I got my lights and camera batteries over there charging. You know, I took some figures out of storage that I think I might need to photograph this month. I'm all ready to go. All I need is an idea.
Okay, so the first day I got to work on was day 19, DC Delight. Now, I decided to do this one first because it was kind of a priority. This was for a collab, and if something happened, I wanted to make sure I had this shot ready to go. For my photo, I wanted to do this one art of Superman sitting on a cloud. I've seen this done a few times by other toy photographers, but I wanted to give my own shake at it. First things first, I cut into a pillow to get some stuffing. Pillow stuffing is perfect for clouds. That's gotta be like a top 5 ACBA practical effect of all time. I got the Mezco Superman posed on top of this riser to actually support him in the air, because, you know, man cannot live on pillow stuffing alone. Essentially, the effect here is done by hiding the riser underneath with all the stuffing covering it. And then I moved this little setup over to my photo desk, and I got to work shooting it. I wanted the picture to be vertical and kind of a wider zoomed out shot, so I positioned my camera like so. And then it was kind of just a matter of filling the frame with stuffing. I used similar risers as earlier to hold up some stuffing in the background. I even had stuffing on this little stand in the top left corner just to fill the space a bit more. And then as soon as things started to look good, everything fell over and I had to redo a lot of it because I moved the stuffing around and it was a mess, okay? Listen, it's quite annoying, quite the frustrating setback when stuff like this happens, but the show must go on. So I set it all back up, and that was looking pretty good. It's time for lighting and a background. Which, for a shot like this, your lighting and your background need to work together. There has to be a synergy there because I want the sun shining in the background facing toward the camera, and I need a lighting setup that reflects that background. All the elements in your shot should work together. There should be a harmony in your work. If the sun is on the left of the frame, the light should be coming from the same place the sun is at. Another good example of this type of thing is if you have a gunfire effect in a photo, try to light the environment and the figure around the effect to make it look like the gun is actually impacting the surroundings by having that light flare around. Like, that's a really good way of making your photo more consistent and believable. I found this blue sky online, which I pulled up on my monitor. I edited a sun into the image in Photoshop, and I struggled to get it as bright as I wanted, so I concluded I was just gonna have to make the sun brighter with a mask later in Lightroom, but more on that later. Here's how the lighting setup turned out. Note how much harsher it is on the figure's left-hand side. Also, one thing I quite enjoy is whenever I have a weird material like this cotton that has all these little holes and these loops with the threads and stuff attaching to make like the cotton that looks like the clouds, like, it's always cool to put like a light underneath that and see how the light hits every crevice of it, and I just love how that looks illuminated. Here's how the shot came out fresh off the camera before editing, and I quite like the look of this, aside from the sun, but I'll get to that in a second. In Lightroom, I did some color correcting. I wanted more vibrance. I also felt that the white balance was a bit too orange originally, so I made it more of like a neutral white color. I like when shots like this have a consistent color throughout the whole image, like how I use that bright white on the sun as well as the clouds here. And of course I had to go into Lightroom and make a radial mask over the sun. I needed it to just be a really attention-grabbing part of the image. I tried to frame this photo like the sun is the core of the picture and the rest is framed like shapes basing off of that one part. Picking one focal point and having the rest of your image structured around it is a very easy way to make your photo satisfying to look at, because it makes it feel really organized. Like the entire image is designed in a way where it's guiding your eyes up to that top right-hand corner. Only thing I probably would have changed about this post in retrospect is I think the elbow should be touching the cloud. It's sort of an awkward pose sitting like that without something below it. But yeah, aside from that one little detail, I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. Definitely a good way to start the month off. And shout out to my collaborators. I really like how Diego's shot came out with Steel and Cyborg Superman, and I like the action scene here with the bright colors, and you know, I like the choice of characters as well. There's a good amount of variety amongst our photos here. Like Ray did this shot of the Revoltech Supergirl floating in the sky, and I really like how crisp the lighting is coming in on the left side right there. Artistic Toaster did a similar shot. He's got Hush Superman flying through the sky, and he did a very nice job with that like cloud parting effect. That looks great. So yeah, shout out to those three guys. Great photos all around, and they also all did all 31, or I guess 32 days of October, as you'll soon see. So yeah, go give them a follow. Great photographers, great guys, and I look forward to collabing again in the future. Day 3, it's gonna take an army. Now, in real life, Musashi Miyamoto reportedly fought 70 men in one-on-one battles. Now, in the manga Vagabond, a story about Musashi Miyamoto, while there are a lot of 1v1 battles, there's also this one scene that is like a one man versus 70, a whole army of people have come to kill him, and it's a beautiful sequence, and the goal is going to be to recreate something from that.
So this was the panel that I was originally going to use as the main reference for this photo, but it was one of those nights where I sat down to shoot this and I genuinely just cooked up some bullshit, okay? I won't go into every detail of why this didn't work out, but at its core, the main problem was really just me forgetting one of the golden rules I have with taking photos, which is minimalism. I try to make my setups as small as possible, because usually for a shot like this, I know exactly what I want the photo to look like, so it's really just a matter of building a setup around what's gonna be on screen. I don't need a whole room or a whole field if the whole thing isn't gonna be shown on the camera. That's just a waste of space and it's disorganized. But here, I think here when I was working on this, I lost my mind or something. I set up this whole extra desk to contain this huge grass rug, which made the shot way too difficult to take. It was a big hassle to set up, and it was just a mess. It was a lot going on to an unnecessary degree. I think I wanted this shot to feel grandiose, which is why I had such a big environment, but what I should have done is just used more ninjas. Like, as you can see here, I have this big environment with just 3 ninjas. It feels more open and empty than it does like a big battle. So the big rework I made is to go for a small environment with 9 ninjas, so we have a lot of dudes in a small area as opposed to a big area with just a few dudes. These changes just make for a more condensed shot with more going on, which I think better sells the idea of it taking an army, as the theme suggests. It was kind of a big kick in the teeth though, because I spent a whole night working on this big setup and none of it really amounted to anything, but you know, after remaking it, I was quite happy with the changes. I still used the grass rug, now with Musashi standing up fighting because there were more ninjas and I was no longer just trying to reference that panel. I was kind of doing my own thing. It was pretty annoying to get them all to stand, but I did set up the 9 ninjas around him. This background is just a mountain range that I found on Google. One final touch is that I added this bird flying overhead like in the manga, as well as this bird eating one of the dead dudes. Here's how the shot ended up looking. Over in Lightroom, I was trying to make the photo more sharp and very aired out, so I desaturated it, added some color grading, and raised the clarity. Also a mask over the bird, making it a silhouette with motion blur. One thing I did pay attention to is to make sure that despite the chaos around him, Musashi is clearly focused on one target, which is something he describes doing in the original scene in the manga. Instead of thinking it as a 1v70, he more views it as 70 1v1s in a row. Out of all the shots I did this month, this is the one that changed the most from start to finish. This scene is just so good in the manga. I quite enjoyed rereading it to work on this, and just, it's such a well-drawn fight with a lot of narrative weight to it. If you haven't already, you need to read Vagabond. And also army building and the one versus many fight scenes are some of my favorite parts of ACBA, so I always look forward to whenever I get a chance to do a shot like this. So yeah, I love this theme. It was really fun to work on this one.
Day 1 Milestone Moment. Now, this one's kind of open-ended. I feel like there's a million things you could do for Milestone Moment, which is, in my opinion, part of the challenge. Like, it makes it more special when you come up with that one idea that really stands out. I decided that a milestone moment should be something that a character has trained really hard for, and then they finally accomplish. One story that brings up a lot of these themes of hard work and practicing is Hajime no Ippo, a story about boxing. Early on in Ippo, there's a scene where he has to practice catching 10 leaves as they fall down from a tree. That way he can to train his reaction time to become a boxer.
Currently, the only Ippo figure that exists is this old Epoch one that has been on this planet longer than I have, and I will be using that for this photo. Here's the starting setup I came up with grass and this tree on top of a plastic container. One random thing I struggled with was getting like a bushy top of a tree like in this panel. I needed like a very stereotypical tree prop, which I just don't have. I ended up just taping these real life leaves that I found outside on top, and that works well enough to the effect of just making a tree. It's a pretty normal tree. I don't want to overcomplicate things. I added some grass and shrubs to decorate the ground, and I also grabbed this picture for my background. I pulled it up on my monitor. I really wasn't sure how I wanted to light this yet, so I just began with a silhouette, and then I added this LED and these two desk lamps. I have these tiny leaves you can find on Amazon. They are quite handy to detail your shots. But for this particular piece, I got a couple pictures of them falling down in front of Ippo. I shot at 1/800th of a second. If you want more info on how I do these fast shutter speed shots or what these numbers even mean, go check out this video I made a few months ago during 2025. I sprinkled a bunch of leaves around the place here, and I combined different takes in Photoshop to get one result with 10 leaves falling down. And then I decided I also wanted to do another panel, so I put a piece of glass in front of the figure here with leaves stuck to it, and I shot it from the side so it looked like he was punching them as they fell all around him. Once I had both panels shot, I took them both into Lightroom and I edited the same settings, right? I wanted more contrast, richer shadows, brighter bright points. And then I took both panels into Photoshop and I smashed them together with a gradient mask going between panels, and I also masked Ippo's head over the top of it so he'd stand out over the panel. And yeah, that's everything for this one. I knew this shot was kind of important to get right because it's for day one, and I wanted to start off strong. I've always wanted to do more stuff from Hajime no Ippo, and Milestone Moment felt like a perfect opportunity. As soon as I thought of the idea, I knew I had to do this. I knew I had to get it right. And you know, for better or worse, I felt a lot of pressure this month. You know, it's not really possible, but I was trying very hard to make a set of 31 photos where none of them were duds. The mentality I had was to aim to make at least one thing I loved about everything I shot this month, and if I couldn't find something I loved about the photo, then it was back to the drawing board, time to restart. And for this one, I love the effect I used. I like the idea for using this theme for Milestone Moment. I think it works really well with like the themes of the Hajime no Ippo story. I think it's just like a very good, well put together thing. I'm very happy with how this turned out.
Day 7 point of view. Now, in my opinion, this is a great theme because you can interpret it in a bunch of different ways. You could do a photo that relies on the point of view and the perspective. You could do literally like a first person point of view shot as well. I saw a lot of those that were pretty cool. Or you could even do like point of view in like the matter of opinions on something, like two characters that have different perspectives. The shot I ended up doing was the famous episode 1 Phantom Menace poster where, you know, you have Anakin walking in the desert and he's got Darth Vader's shadow behind him.
This was a weird one because the original image, while very iconic, is not the greatest Photoshop ever. And on top of that, I want to try to do this partially practically. You'll see what I mean by partially in a second. The first thing I did in working on this is I took the original image and I made a shape of the shadow that was just black that I could print and cut out. Then I went and got this harsh desk lamp that I had in storage, and the idea was just to beam this cutout with light and it would cast a clear shadow behind it on the wall. For Anakin, I have this shitty Black Series figure. It sucks, but you know, it gets the job done for this. Also got this desert wall that I bought like 3 years ago, and I don't think I've ever used it in a photo, not once, so it was cool to finally like dust it off and do something with it. Here's the lighting setup with this LED in the back to balance things out, and okay, I feel the need to explain why the background is such a weird color and why the lighting is so orange. Pretty much that desk lamp I mentioned earlier has an actual bulb in it, and it makes the lighting have this ugly orange tint going on, and thankfully my camera has a setting that corrects this. It makes the white balance very blue, which makes the orange lighting appear white. So working around this to make my LED appear white on the camera, I also made that orange to match the bulb. That way it would get hit by like the big blue filter and it would make it white. And then for the background, it's this purple color, which is the right shade of purple to make it look like blue on the camera with this filter applied. Very complicated and roundabout way of doing this, but it lets me use this lamp. And the reason why I wanted to use this lamp, even though it's so orange, is because it's the harshest lamp I had, and it gives me that very clear shadow shadow on the background, which I thought was pretty important to doing this. Now, for how I actually got the effect where you have Anakin in the foreground and Vader's shadow in the background, I pretty much did two photos. One with Anakin walking like normal with his shadow in the background, and then I did another take with Vader's shadow, the cutout that I made to have Vader's shadow in that background in that particular shape. I got another take with that, and then in Photoshop, I combined them. So it's not done entirely tangible, which it probably wouldn't be impossible to do tangibly, but I simply lack the knowledge when it comes to how to do this lighting without any Photoshop. But with that said, I still did want the shadow in the final photo to be one that I actually had in my setup. I didn't want to just make a fake shadow in Photoshop. I didn't think that would look very good if I edited that in. But yeah, here's the combined photo, and I tweaked it a bit in Lightroom, not a lot, but I got it a little bit of color grading to get it how I really wanted in. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I do quite like how this effect here came out with the shadow. The shadow could have been sharper and more clear. It is kind of fuzzy in my photo, but I almost think that adds to the look a bit. I think it makes it look more natural, even if it doesn't look like the original poster. And it's one of those things where you look at this image regardless, and it's instantly recognizable as to what this is, and I think I did a good job adapting it into my photography.
Day 18 in Another Life. So, okay, this one's kind of complicated. Spoilers for the visual novel Fate Stay Night. That story has multiple different endings, and the first ending to the game, the Fate route ending, is very bittersweet. You know, you spend the whole story with these two characters, and they ultimately are not able to end up together, but the time they spent changes who they are as people. It's a beautiful, bittersweet ending. The remastered version of the game adds an extra version of this ending at the end, where these two characters are able to meet back up later in life, and it's very beautiful and happy. And I decided to do that version of the story, that extra ending, as my In Another Life photo.
Like the Musashi photo for day 2, this one just began with some grassy hills. Then I got my camera in here and zoomed out. The main inspiration was this specific panel from the manga version of this ending with Shiro hugging Saber. A bunch of lights around and a nice blue sky. Now, one thing I don't like about this shot, looking back, is the camera angle and the aspect ratio. I find it to just be boring. I think the square shot that I had before was much more interesting, especially if I added onto the scenery more and such. This could have been the best version of the photo, but anyway, similar to the Superman shot, I used pillow stuffing to create the clouds here, and I did it real close to the camera. There's a lot of ways to create clouds in your photos. This particular way makes them look very hazy, and it creates a cool dream-like atmosphere, which I thought worked for this. In Lightroom, I made the colors warmer, more vibrant, also some handy masks to just add more light in places like on the edge here. After I shot it, I ended up really wishing it was centered, and so I started to mess with it in Photoshop, and I was able to extend it, make it a square with content-aware fill, and then I added some text from the manga chapter in Photoshop, which I do think ties it together nicely. I love the look of this photo, okay? Don't get me wrong, I think I did nail the aesthetics, and the text is a nice touch, but man, I should have centered it, I should have done it a little bit differently, and then I could center the text as well, and that would look great. Honestly, right now, I think I could re-edit this, and it would look nicer than what I ended up posting. And overall, I think out of all the Octoyber shots I did, this is the one I'm most likely to remake in the future. Honestly, I would just change the framing a bit. This month, one thing I worked on learning and practicing was just how to make an eye-catching photo. It's just one of those things where I got better at it after I shot this photo, so I'm looking back at it now and I just don't love it, to be honest. But I'm still happy I did it. Like I said, I think the scenery looks really nice here. I love how the lighting and the colors look, and you know, it is a pretty beautiful scene from the series to recreate. So I'm happy with it in that sense, but it would be cool to re-hit this one day.
Day 8 told through panels. Now, obviously this theme is implying you should do like a comic book or a manga style page with a bunch of panels, but I've already done a bunch of shots like that, and as you'll see, I go on to do even more stuff like that later in the video. So for the actual theme called Told Through Panels, I decided to do things a bit differently. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a series known for its colorful and cool artwork, and in the story there's a character named Rohan, who is a mangaka. You know, he literally tells stories through panels. So the shot idea is I have that SHF Rohan sitting in an art studio surrounded by a bunch of artworks, you know, stories told through panels in this art studio that he's drawn.
Okay, so getting started, this was really just the task of putting together all of the props that would look good in an art studio. paint supplies, paper, one of those slanted desk things, a TV. And hey, I mean, it's pretty cramped, but I would work out of this room. I would take photos right there. One thing to note is that this space is enclosed from 4 different angles. I have 3 walls and a floor, which means I can kind of just shove my lens inside here and zoom out and capture this entire space in all of its details. The main idea here was to fill all of these tables with drawings. So I looked around online for some good pieces of art that Araki has done for JoJo's, mainly in art books and stuff, and also he did this one Dragon Ball art that I thought would be fun to throw in here. I even included some JoJo fan art as well as some JoJo figure photography as just like little Easter eggs to other people that I know in the community. And after pasting everything I found into a Word document, I did a couple test prints to get the sizing all correct. And then once I was happy with the results, I went to Staples and got this document printed in color on some cardstock. And then from there, it was just a matter of cutting it up into a bunch of little drawings and spreading it across the entire room. The goal is to make it look lived in and believable, like he's actually in here working on a bunch of different things. Then I put SHF Rohan in the room here in his natural habitat. Pretty even lighting around the room here, wanted to make sure you could see all the drawings clearly. I did take a bit of time here to just tweak the setup and try to make it look natural. And when I was ready, I put my camera in the room and made a wide shot like I talked about earlier. Wanted something vertical and kind of blown out with all the artwork across the room in the shot, sort of surrounding Rohan, like he's the center of all these drawings and they're revolving around him. The point of having a subject in your photo is that it's the thing the rest of the shot revolves around. Everything else in the image is to point attention to that one thing. That's kind of the definition I came up with pretty early on in the month for what would make a photo fun to look at. It's fun when you look at a photo and it's all pointing toward this one focal point. It's super organized and I just find it extremely satisfying. So I made that my guideline. Have one clear point of your photo and everything should contribute to that one point. And so yeah, that was super fun to work on. JoJo stands out in my mind for its colorful artwork and drawings, and I loved capturing that in a figure photo like this. It was also nice to shoot SHF Rohan. I haven't seen any proper ACBA with this guy, I think, ever. I think the solid color black suit works very nicely here, surrounded by all these vibrant artworks. It's a good contrast, so it was the perfect figure for the job here.
Day 2, Unmatched Aura. What I decided to go for is from the manga The Climber, which is my personal favorite manga, so I was very excited to work on this. The main character of that story, named Mori, is seen as this immortal climber that climbs mountains all by himself. He's this immortal solo climber, and I wanted to do a photo that represents that title that he has.
Now there's a lot I could do with this. It's one of those things where it's kind of a nebulous idea, like there's no actual figures from this series, so I had to get creative. One important thing for this shot is Mori's title and how I'm going to incorporate that title into the photo, because that's the thing that defines the aura as being unmatched, if you will. There isn't a specific panel of him climbing with the title attached, but in my head I cooked up this idea where it's like he's hanging on the side of like a snowy mountain with text reading out the immortal Keito Buntaro. So now that I had an idea solidified, it was just a matter of making it real. So first things first, the text. I printed out these speech bubbles. One small issue with this idea is that there's no merchandise for this manga, period, let alone a figure. So I ended up using this G.I. Joe figure that was in rock climbing gear, and that worked well enough. Also, that right there is a Dragon Ball like Arctic diorama from the Broly movie. I cut it up and put it on its side, and that's what I'll be using as the cliff that he's climbing up. I got my camera set up how I wanted, and then I moved the cutout in frame. Small thing, I misspelt something on the cutout. I make these myself in Photoshop, and then I print them out, and yeah, that was one thing that I did make that mistake, and I did fix it later on in Photoshop. I edited it to be corrected, but I didn't want to have to do all that, but like I did, and you know, it's unfortunate, but it had to be done. Anyways, for lighting, I have a couple LEDs to the left and one coming down from the top of the quote-unquote mountain. You know, I wanted to look like there was light shining down on him as he climbs up. The last step to doing this was the background. I found this stock image on Google. This is one of those setups where while I was doing it, I was like, this does not look good. I'm making straight bullshit right now. But then I put the background up and it really tied the whole thing together. I remember specifically thinking that when I made it. I also got this other shot, which is close up, just zoomed in on like the tool he's using to climb. What do you call that? Is that an ice pick? Is that the name of that thing? Well, the idea was just later on I would be able to use this as an extra panel. Here's the main shot though, just fresh off the camera. Over in Lightroom, I just juiced my contrast and clarity up, and I also gave my shadows a bit of a green hue to them. It gives it kind of like a good cinematic feel to the shot. The editing process is actually the exact same as the Ippo shot I did earlier in the month, where I combined these two pictures with a gradient, and then I had a mask so parts of it would like overlay on top. I'm quite happy with how this looks, and and it's also one of those things where I just never thought I was going to be able to do a photo from the climber, so this was just cool in that regard as well. It was cool to come up with a way to do this. And this photo is actually very special to me because it made its way over on Instagram to Shinichi Sakamoto, the mangaka that made the climber. He reposted my photo on his story, and that's probably one of the biggest honors I've received in general in taking photos. The climber is my favorite manga, and seeing my work get recognized and appreciated by an artist who I really respect meant a lot. That kind of made my whole month from here on out. Like, there are other photos I took that I probably like more this month, but this one is, it has a very particular place to me because of that support I got on it.
Now this feels like a pretty good time in the month to talk about the competition side of things. The theme list is of course released by the ACBA podcast. You know, after the month ends, they go through all the entries and they pick their favorites, you know, a first, second, and third place winner. Now me personally, I've never really played to win. I think if I did that, I wouldn't do every single day. I would just pick and choose my favorites and think like, okay, quality over quantity. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a little bit of me that wants to win, like really badly. It's because, okay, here's the thing. Octoyber is awesome because everyone's taking their best photos. Everyone is working their hardest to make the best photos they can. And when I see a cool photo on Instagram, it makes me want to go take cool photos, and the ball kind of gets passed to me. And then when I take cool photos, I pass the ball back to the people that see it, and then it keeps going back and forth, and we're all improving. You know, iron sharpens iron. We all see each other's photos, we get inspired, we all take better photos. The rest of the year is the off season. This is the game time. And eventually, when you're passing that ball around and we're all improving, it has to end with somebody. And in taking photos this month, I was like, yeah, this would raise the bar up, I hope. Okay, so day 10 off the scales. Now, in the past, they have done this theme before. I remember, I think it was October like 2023, I did a shot of Shenron coming out of a building. And you know, it's cause like, he's big in scale, he's off the scales, but also like dragon scales. But this time I decided to do something completely different. I was thinking of things that I consider to be off the scales, like photo ideas that like are sort of so out there that like I've never thought of trying them. And there's this one shot from End of Evangelion that like I watched Evangelion again, it came back to theaters in 2024. And there's this one shot in that movie that I've always wanted to do a photo of, but it just seemed so impossible. So we're gonna try to find a way to make that work.
Okay, so let's just get some stuff out of the way. The original shot depicts a massive white ghost ray lifting the black moon out of the core of the earth as it grows these huge wings. It's huge in scale. In fact, it's off the scales, if you will. Okay, so where on earth do I begin to do a shot like this where I don't have any dioramas or figures or anything in the picture, and I have pretty much zero frame of reference for where to begin? Basically, the mindset that I try to have is I break down each piece of the shot and try to figure out what my best course of action is to adapt each individual element. So for instance, like let's begin with the wings. That's probably the most important part of the photo after all. In order to do that, the first step isn't actually on my camera, it's over in Photoshop. I just traced the shape of the wings and I got this PNG to work with. I put this into a Word document and took it to Staples and got this shape printed onto cardstock. And when I got home, I cut out the shape of the wing as best I could, which kind of went along the lines I had in the print. And with all said and done, I came up with these two cardstock wings to work with. Okay, but what about the figure? This is a figure photo after all. How the fuck am I gonna do that? There's no figure of like the ghost ray. So I got thinking really outside of the box, and essentially the idea here is to use the incandescent lighting setting on my camera. I talked about it a bit earlier, but this setting is designed to correct the orange color of a light bulb. So in a room of warm lighting, it'll just look normal, and in a room with normal lighting, it'll just look really blue, just super blue. I always use this setting if I want really bright blues in a particular photo, and the idea is essentially to shoot a normal Figma base body, but with this setting on, so the orangey flesh on the skin will appear as like a whitish blue color. But yeah, this is just some random Figma styles base body, and it has the Figma ray head on top of it, which isn't ideal, and it will require some finagling, but it's the best I got to work with. Before I can start shooting though, I need one more thing. I need a way to depict the Earth for her to be rising out of and picking up the black moon out of the planet. The first idea I had was to use this green foam half sphere, like what you'd put plants in, but I also made sure to get a cutout of the planet as well, which came in handy later. Okay, so now I have the wings, the figure, and the planet. I just need to put it all together and put the background, and everything should work. except it didn't. So the first issue I ran into is that the wings, despite being cardstock, are still too flimsy. And just overall, I hadn't put much thought into how I was going to hold the wings up around the figure, because actually I need 2 sets of wings, because there's the little wing at the bottom that can't be connected to the top one. That has to be a whole separate thing. Okay, so first thing I needed to do was stabilize them. I got these metal stands, which I had to bend into an angle shape to work as like a skeleton to hold the wings up. And I used some popsicle sticks as well, which I taped inside to strengthen them into holding that shape, which definitely helped with stability. I also used a heavy object at the bottom to use as a weight to prevent them from tipping over. And after a lot of tweaking, I managed to get the wings set up nicely, and I added the foam planet in front. And finally, after all of this preparation, we are getting somewhere. For the little wings, I attached them with these Figma stands. All of this shit here is held together with masking tape, by the way. That is the state of affairs on the Aaron Scott YouTube channel. I am holding cardstock and popsicle sticks together with masking tape like it's an arts and crafts project. But hey, that's a pretty good looking setup right there. That's coming out quite nicely. One thing I kind of just forgot to think about until right now is how I was gonna do the black moon, but I pretty much just pulled a doorknob off of a diorama and I used that, which looked good enough on camera. It's a very small but essential part of the photo. Then to bring in Ray, I grabbed the figure and stuck her into some foam, which I placed this setup on a riser. And as you can see, we are definitely using some movie magic here. This is the type of setup that can only look good from one angle. But from that one angle, man, does it look good? Like, this is definitely the most ambitious shot I've talked about so far, but I was slowly but surely turning it into a final realized photograph. Like, it was working. For lighting, I kind of just decided to beam my subject with a lamp, and the thought process was that the brighter I light the subject with the incandescent setting, the better I'll be able to get the effect I'm shooting for, because this lamp has an orange hue to it, so if I light the whole setup with this orange hue, then the skin tone will just blend in, and then when I make it all white, it'll all look white, and that's kind of what I want. I spent quite a bit of time in my camera settings just trying to desaturate everything and get it to really look like this whitish blue. I knew I was gonna have to do more work in Lightroom, but as much as I could do in the shoot itself, I wanted to. For the background, I just made this in Photoshop, recreating what was in the original shot with the moon and sun behind her. The next issue I ran into is that, like, okay, originally it was an alright idea to use the foam half sphere, but like looking at it in the photo, it just looks nothing like Earth, and it's kind of unacceptable. But that is where that cutout that I made earlier comes in. I pretty much just taped it down, wrapping around the planet, and that looks surprisingly good. Like, that really does look like the planet right there. One bit I struggled with is to do these like impacts, like these shock waves that shoot out around the Earth in the original image. Like, I didn't really have a good way of doing that. I ended up just using the Poncheesy Dusties, which those do a good job showing the impact. They show the motion going on here, but they're not really super accurate. But, you know, that's just the best I could come up with, I'll be honest. And with that concludes the setup. That is everything that went into getting this to look the way it does. Here is the shot that I took, which is not much yet, but this is perfect to get to editing. Before I even started on color correcting, I took it into Photoshop and just cleaned things up. There's little specks of dust and things. Also got rid of the stand in the background, and I removed the little like piloting parts on Ray's head, because that, you know, she obviously wouldn't have those here. Then for a big color correction, I cranked the contrast all the way up, lowered the saturation a tad, made my blues in even lower saturation, and even raised their brightness. I really wanted that blue color to be a neutral white, so I also raised my whites up a lot, and generally the idea was to have less color overall with a lot of contrast. That made the sky a very dark color. It's this deep black color almost, and the bright parts on the figure are super white and glowy looking, which is what I wanted. Also some slight pink hue to the highlights just to add a bit more color to the shot, you know, because I removed so much of the color. And yeah, I adore this picture. I think I've talked about this photo enough. My recording is almost at 7 minutes right now for this segment. But yeah, just like so much problem solving went into creating this, and all in all, I just love it. It looks so grand. You know, aside from a couple of hiccups, like not that much actually went wrong in working on this, which was surprising. I was expecting this to be one that was going to go through a lot more trial and error than it actually did, and that's why I did it earlier in the month, because I didn't want to be on some type of time crunch if I had to like stop and like paint the whole figure white or something, for example. That's what was kind of worrying me. But no, this was not nearly as difficult as I made it feel like it would be in my head. Like, once I planned it out, I kind of just did it pretty seamlessly, and then afterwards I went to the movies and I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was rerunning, and you know, that was a pretty cool movie to go and see, especially right after shooting this. It was like a big weight had been lifted off my chest, and then I went to see a movie. It was quite the day. But yeah, like I said, one of my favorite shots I did. Now I'll stop talking. On to the next segment.
Day 13, life-changing lesson. Now, I kind of had a weird approach to this. I wanted to do a story that teaches a lesson about a character wasting their life, or something that affects their life greatly, and it teaches the viewer some type of lesson. What came to my mind was Hunter x Hunter. Spoilers for like the end of the Hunter x Hunter anime. There's this scene where the main character, Gon, is fighting a character, and they waste the rest of their lifespan in order to have enough strength to beat them. They make like a contract that lets them, throw away their whole life just to fight this one character.
This custom is essentially just a Romanki body with a resin head sculpt and cloth goods from Tots on Instagram. The goal was to recreate this manga panel from when this happens. I have an idea for how to do the black brush strokes, and yeah, I just let me cook. I got some stuff coming up. For the main setup on this one, it's really just a white lightbox background and the figure. It doesn't get easier than that. So let's make it harder. I'm gonna use this piece of glass, and the idea is to literally draw the effects on with a black marker by drawing on the glass. At least initially, I was gonna use a Sharpie to do this. That idea was kind of dumb. It doesn't look great. Like on camera, it just doesn't show up all that nice. So I went and grabbed this black acrylic paint, which I had lying around. I didn't have an easel, so I just used a napkin and just squirted that shit out. I don't really paint, I'm not gonna lie, so I'm not really sure like what I'm doing. I'm quite amateur at this. I ended up just painting these strokes like this around the figure, and I looked at it my camera screen while I did it as kind of a guide to make sure it ended up looking good in the final photo. Like I said, I don't paint anything. I've never done something like this for a photo, so this was quite the experiment, and I got paint all over my hands. But overall, I think it was worth it. I really like how this final product was turning out. I do think this raw photo here ended up looking kind of soft, so in Lightroom, I went in and I emphasized it with a lot of contrast, a lot of saturation, buffing the clarity as well. I just wanted it to look more defined. This shot was initially just an experiment, but I'm quite pleased with the turnout here. Also, it's just always cool shooting a custom figure like this, because it's one of those things where nobody else has this to work on. It's kind of a unique thing I get to dig my teeth into. Except Artistic Toaster will soon have this figure, because I sent it to him to take pictures with, so go follow that guy. Also, it was good that this method using the paint to create this effect worked out now, because I went on to use this later in the month as well for another shot, so look forward to that coming up pretty soon.
Day 9, I've made a huge mistake. Now, as soon as I read this theme title, I knew exactly what photo I wanted to do. That shot from Evangelion where Shinji is sitting in the chair crying.
I felt so smart after coming up with the idea for this theme. So smart that I went and bought the wrong scale chair, and oh man, it's way too big. Okay, so I used this small foam bit as like a booster seat to make Shinji higher up so he'd be closer to the camera, and that way he'd appear bigger, making the chair look in scale, even if it was made for a bigger scale. That was the idea, that I could raise him up and it would look good. And that worked pretty well, honestly. Minor setback, but we overcome those, not a problem. Even if you haven't seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, you've probably seen this image. You know exactly what this shot is. So I wanted to make this work no matter what. I thought this was a pretty important thing to recreate and get right. Also, this custom Shinji figure was made by My Custom Figures on Instagram, and I got it from Gabe. Gabe sent me his, he got the figure made, and then I borrowed it from him to do these photos. So thank you to those two guys. The base for this setup is the purple planet below him. I made it in Photoshop by editing the original scene, and I printed it on cardstock, and then I cut it out to use as the floor for this photo. The rest of the background is just this black fabric roll that I put in my light box, which I then added all the other elements on top of. The lighting for this was just a lamp and this LED, and that kind of did just work. Everything was set up how I needed, and from here it was just a process of getting the right angle and pose, which was a way bigger pain in the ass than I'm making it out to be. Despite being very simple, this frame is so iconic, and it's been burned into my brain. And in recreating, I was very much so struggling with getting the look right. I had early drafts that looked like this, and I didn't like it, but after much reworking, the final draft became this. I did my work in Lightroom, and here's the final product after a bit of editing. I always underestimate how hard recreating popular stuff is, but when you think about it, you're taking a drawing that you've looked at 1,000 times, and you're trying to make it in real life and take a picture of it that looks like that drawing. That's actually a pretty hard process to do when you think about it. It's tricky to adapt a visual like that between art forms. But recreating a famous image like this as a figure photo is pretty cool, and it's a very fun challenge. So in my opinion, it's worth the effort. I used to hate doing recreations of shots because I thought it was boring and difficult and just didn't really work, but now I understand it's a pretty fun challenge once you can wrap your head around it.
Day 15, the fit is clean. I think of fits, I think of suits, I think of superhero costumes, I think of Kick-Ass. The green spandex outfit with the Tims, that's exactly what I want to do.
My two favorite scenes from Kick-Ass are the one where he gets beat up and posted on the internet, and the one where he's looking in the mirror at his costume and getting himself all hyped up, and we're gonna do the latter of those two. So I went and grabbed this 1/12 scale mirror, which has an actual reflection in it. As for other props, I grabbed these miniature comics and stuff I got on eBay, and I'm gonna be filling up this diorama with all sorts of stuff, like junk food, this lamp, these shelves with newspapers, and even this little beanbag chair which I had. People always ask me where I get my props from, and all this stuff is just 1/12 scale dollhouse accessories, which works perfectly for figure photography like this, and you can find just about anything on eBay or Etsy if you search with the right terms. I will say though, all these props are made for 1/12 scale, and I'm using the NECA Kick-Ass, which is a bit taller than 1/12 scale, so he's kind of huge, but generally these will work with all your Mayfex, your Marvel Legends, your Figuarts, all that stuff. Anyway, I set up these two lights specifically out of frame so you can't see them in the mirror. Okay, so having a mirror as the subject of your photo is actually way easier than it looks. As long as you're at the right angle where your camera is out of view, it's kind of just a matter of filling the background. Which, by the way, as long as you aren't shooting directly forward, it's actually very easy to hide your camera.
Because like you have to position the figure just right. You have to position your camera just right. Sometimes you have to position the mirror just right as well, depending on which order you set stuff up in, because if you set up your scene first, then your angle is like completely reliant on where your mirror is and where your figure is. But if you set your camera up first, then you have free range to move all this stuff around.
Shots like this are a lot of fun. I think everyone needs to try a mirror photo at some point or another. And yeah, that's why you see me holding up this wall. It's just filling up that space that's going to be on screen in the mirror behind the figure. I also have my computer mouse as a remote to hit shutter, so if I hold the wall with one hand and I click shutter with the other one, the setup just kind of works. One big note is I have my f-stop at f22, and all that means is that the higher that f number is, the more stuff is going to be in focus. So that's why this shot is very sharp and you can see all the props and stuff. I talked about this more in this video over the summer, so if you want more information on some basic camera settings, go check that out. I made some edits in Lightroom just to make the shot have a bit more vibrance and to tweak the white balance a tad. Very fun photo to take, you know, Kick-Ass is such a good movie. I rewatched that while shooting this. It's a very self-aware comic book story, so I tried to capture a bit of that in my photo with the messy room and the comics everywhere. I think the props really sell this one. I think one day I will do a shot of him getting beat up and post it on the internet, but that's something for another time. Now, one thing I do want to note is that, like I said at the start of the segment, this shot was originally for day 5. Everyone loves a hero. But after thinking about it a bit, with him looking in the mirror and looking at the costume, I actually like this shot way more for day 15, which is called The Fit is Clean. And that does solve the problem of needing an idea for day 15, but now I need to come up with a new idea for day 5, which is a very early day in the month to not have anything planned for yet, and I really put it off to the last minute. But without saying too much, I am so glad I made that decision, because the shot I went on to make for day 5 is probably the most important one I did all month. But yeah, more on that later in the video.
Day 28, Vehicular Valor. Now, I love this theme. Whenever you have a vehicle of any kind in your figure photo, it's so cool in my opinion. That's some awesome shit right there. You know, you just got a big ass car. That's so sick. I want to do a shot from Akira of Kaneda sitting in a garage working on his bike.
First thing I did was unbox this new diorama I got from 78 Points of Articulation.
You get a diorama in and you get like photo ideas from all of it. Like I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to have a character walking through that door and coming over here, and like maybe they're at the vent doing something, and maybe there's like a rock in this corner of the frame. You know, I get all sorts of ideas just looking at the extra parts this thing comes with. It's, you buy this shit and you can do like 8 different photos just off the cuff.
He always does quality work, man. This thing just looks stunning. I had a bunch of fun shooting with this diorama all month, and I always recommend his products. It's a very high quality item you're getting. Then I got the Poor Toys Kaneda in here, and that bike is from McFarlane, believe it or not. And then I gave him this little toolbox and a soda. Now, I didn't even need to use a tripod on this one. I just got my camera camera right up in here, low shot, looking up from the ground while he's working on the bike. I spent a little bit just adding other props to fill out the frame, like his jacket here in the back. This is the setup I came up with. And I gotta say, I love how tall this diorama is, because I can shoot it from the ground looking up here, and there's details going all the way up. You got the pipes hanging over and all sorts of metal bits sticking out. It creates a lot of depth in a photo like this. And because I really like the depth up there, I decided to accentuate that higher up segment with a blue LED. And that splash of color goes a long way here. I love how the red on the bike looks contrasting with the blue lighting. And I love how you can see the distance between the soda bottle close up to the camera and the pipes all the way up on the ceiling. Also added this little cord here for some more detailing. I just held it with my hand while I shot the photo. And here's how the picture ended up. A big change that I made in Lightroom is I cranked up the clarity a lot. It's one of those filters that I always think makes an image look a lot more rich and crispy. For this photo, it makes the shot look like it's a sci-fi poster or something. Diego told me it looks like an 80s airbrush promo, and now that he mentioned it, that is kind of the look I was going for. I just couldn't pinpoint it. You know, I got the dim lighting, the bright reds and blues, a lot of sharp detailing. It's a very particular look, and I think the figure fits it. Everyone always says this figure has a weird head sculpt, and I get it. The semi-realistic look is kind of weird, but I think when you shoot it in the right environment like this, it actually works. Like, this picture would not look as good, in my opinion, if it was an anime-accurate head sculpt. Anyway, I love how this shot looks. It's one of those ones that I could see myself owning a print of one day, maybe. Really, this one is carried by 78 points. Like, this diorama is just excellent, man. It was a lot of fun to shoot. I remember I couldn't wait to post this one, but I had to wait all month because it's for the 18th of the month. But yeah, for sure, this was one of my favorites that I did.
Day 4, ripped from the page. Now, I want to recreate a famous comic page pretty exactly. I'm thinking that that shot of Bane breaking Batman's back in Nightfall, that's a super famous page, and I can recreate it pretty easily, I think, with the Mafex.
I gotta give a big thanks to this guy, Little Dan. He saved me quite a bit of money this month by just letting me borrow some of his figures, that way I didn't have to buy them. Like this Mafex Batman and Bane, I have thanks to him. So thank you, bro. Thank you for letting me use these. Here is the pose I came up with. I imagined when they designed these figures, it was specifically with this pose in mind. For the background, I wanted to go for a bit of accuracy, so I got this bright orange paper in my light box. The original panel has this little sound effect right here, which I remade in Photoshop, and then I printed out just on printer paper. Even though it wastes so much ink, I put the black rectangle around the text because it gives me more room to cut around. Anyway, it's not the greatest cutout in the world, but I did actually run out of ink, so it's gonna have to work. Back over in the setup, I lit the shot evenly with these two lights, and then I surgically placed this sound effect on top of the figures without knocking anything over. Somehow, it's a miracle. And that's the shot. The setup was very simple, but effective. Like you see the pose, you see the orange background, you know what this is. And the sound effect for sure adds a lot too. Like, stuff like that can really elevate your shot and make it look more animated. I do wish I had a head sculpt of Batman screaming. I think that would sell this a bit better. Also, I could have tried to do the "break you" text at the top. I think that would have been a nice addition. But all in all, I think this turned out very solid. You know, it's instantly recognizable. Ripped off the page, if you will.
Day 16, rewrite history. So I didn't have any ideas for this theme, and then our good friend, Little Dan, you know, sponsor of the show, let me borrow his Sun Wukong figure. Essentially, the photo idea he gave me is that in Journey to the West, there's a part where Sun Wukong erases his name out of the Book of Mortals, effectively making his name like gone. He's immortal now. It's not in the book anymore, so he has another layer of immortality.
Once again, thanks to Dan, he let me borrow his Wukong figure to be able to do this shot. I put him up on the log. I had the book from Mezco Dr. Doom. Some depictions of this scene I found on Google had white smoke floating around him, kind of like Snake Way from Dragon Ball. They must have copied that for this story. I used the Bandai smoke effect to get a similar type of look going on here. I found this rough textured background, which I pulled up on my monitor. The lighting setup consists of a couple LEDs and desk lamps, though I did make the decision to change out this light bulb for a larger one, which I did grab just out of my wall to use for the lamp, and I mean, that is brighter. And this did look good, but I just wasn't a fan of how the shot had a kind of cold feel to it with the blue tones in the background. I just don't imagine this is how this scene should look, so I decided to switch out for an orange background, which I found online. I also added some pillow stuffing to go go for a similar type of bright faded edge type thing, like what I had going on with that saber shot earlier. And overall, I like this art direction a lot more than the first draft. Here's how the new and improved shot turned out. I made sure to bump up the contrast a bunch in Lightroom, and with the main panel done, I went back to the setup to get shots of him reading the book very zoomed in. I shot this at 300 millimeters and then zoomed in on top of that. I also used masking tape as well as a Sharpie to create this kind of like paint streaking effect right here, and I got a shot of that as well. The idea is like he's reading his book and then he scribbles over his name with a paintbrush. And lastly, one more shot of him up close just holding the brush. Over in Photoshop, I pasted in all 4 panels and edited them together to make this comic strip. This was a pretty fun idea, though I think I probably could have conveyed the story a bit better, perhaps with multiple pages of panels to better tell what's happening. Even though I do like how this looks, it kind of does feel like an if you know type of thing, and generally I try to avoid that. I want my photos to be something anyone can look at and understand, even if they aren't familiar with the source material. I think back to all the times I've seen a figure photo of a show I haven't watched or a comic I haven't read, and the photo is so good that it makes me want to go check out the original media it's referencing. And I try to do something similar with my work. I think if I'm good enough at what I do, anyone can consume it and enjoy it, even if they're not into anime or comics and they don't even like figure photography or know what the fuck is going on. They can look at it and go, hey, that's a pretty cool picture. But aside from that, I do really like how this shot came together with the colors and the bright lighting and the background. It matches the figure very well, and it kind of looks like a depiction of like this legendary character you might see in like a drawing or on a mural or something, and that's what I was going for.
Day 6, Villainous Activities. So this one got me thinking. I was like, okay, Villainous Activities, Mad Villainy, the album by MF Doom, Dr. Doom. We're gonna do an MF Doom, Dr. Doom related photo for this one.
First things first, I needed a Dr. Doom figure, so big thanks to Toast Burnt Dark for lending me this figure to do this photograph. You know, he helped out quite a bit this month on another shot later on, but I'll get to that later. Next thing, I grabbed some album covers and some comic books and I put them in a Word document to print out. I already had some miniature records and I bought a tiny little mixer on eBay just to do this shot. I took the records I already had and I taped on the new printed album covers on top. This shot used the same room I used for some earlier pictures. This diorama was pretty handy all month. I loaded the place up with desks and shelves filled with all sorts of props. I even included the book that Mezco Dr. Doom comes with up top here. I also had this extra Operation Doomsday cutout, which I managed to tape onto this TV, and that worked surprisingly well. Also super small in unimportant detail, but I included that mirror from earlier in this shot to show his finger on the audio slider, just for the hell of it, to be honest. Lighting this shot was a bitch. I always used to suck at lighting shots like this where there are so many props. It was very hard for me to do that in the past, but I've been working on it this month. I want this room to feel very cluttered and grimy, and so I want the lighting to be kind of dim and dingy to reflect that. I have one dim LED on the side and another LED up top and a desk lamp lighting it from above. I also made my aperture f/22, that way everything would be in focus. It makes the shot kind of have an edge to it, like you could see the details on everything. It's sort of crusty looking. Over in Lightroom, just continuing some stuff that I've already been talking about, you know, more clarity, more saturation, also a vignette. I used a lot of masks here because some of the paper elements, like the Mad Villainy cover for instance, don't look as good on the camera as they did in real life. I just didn't shoot them as well, so I tried to use masks to make them more defined and easier to look at. This was one of my most popular shots from the month, and I can see why. People love MF Doom, and this is a big tribute post.
But just the meta-ness of it, of having Dr. Doom and an MF Doom setup, chef kiss.
I set out to get a very particular look with the dingy recording studio and covering the room in iconography like this. It makes it look like an album cover or some type of promotional material. I feel like I could see this on a cereal box or something. Very similar shot to the Rohan one earlier in the sense that like they're both in the same room and they're both crammed with all these props pointing toward the subject, but I think I did a way better job on this MF Doom shot because it has a lot more Easter eggs, a lot more care put in, and I also think I like the composition more. I'm a big fan of taking your own work and deconstructing it. Like, even if it's a shot you like, figure out why you like it, compare it with your other work, see what you could do better, see what you're improving on, and I definitely was doing that a lot this month. Like, you could definitely see similarities between this MF Doom shot and the Rohan one, and also the Kick-Ass shot as well to an extent, and I think this is the best of those three.
Day 17 generational run. My friend Toast Burnt Dark did this awesome father-son Kamehameha shot for Milestone Moment. So that got me thinking, okay, I'm gonna do, for day 17 generational run, I'll do the Dragon Ball Heroes version of this that has Bardock in it. I haven't watched Dragon Ball Heroes. I actually don't know anyone who has, but that's a pretty cool idea. You know, you have Bardock, Goku, Gohan, all 3 generations. Like, it's kind of perfect for this theme.
Fun little story. A couple years ago, little Dan bought most of my Dragon Ball SHF collection, and as of today, he's letting me borrow back this Bardock, Gohan, and Goku to do this photo, so we've really come full circle. Also, shout out to Mirage Works on Instagram. He did this diorama that I've used in so many different Dragon Ball shots over the years. Now, I actually found this pose pretty tricky to get right. Like, I had to get all 3 figures posed up super close together like this. I ended up using different heights of the diorama, as well as different effects to hide things, which led me to coming up with this composition. And I'm not crazy about it. I think this shot as a whole ended up just being like good enough, which is frustrating. I light piped the effect from behind with this desk lamp. I see Zurianar do stuff like this all the time, where he light pipes like an aura effect like this and shoots at 1/30th of a second, and his photos look so bright and beautiful. I remember I was taking a lot of inspiration for all the Dragon Ball shots I was doing a couple years ago, so yeah, shout out that guy. He's one of my favorite photographers. I chose this Space Galaxy wallpaper as the background, and then for the actual beam, I have this huge effect piece that I got on BBTS many years ago. I ended up doing this picture by just holding the effect up while looking at my camera screen to make sure it was in frame. Here's the shot fresh off the camera, and I'll be real, I'm not huge on this one. I think it's a very standard Dragon Ball shot. It's not very special, and you know, I think the poses aren't great either. Like, there's not really a lot of energy there. Like, the poses don't evoke anything. Like, I don't get the impression they're actually shooting an attack. But I mean, it's not necessarily bad, and I think the colors and lighting do look very good here. I just don't really think this shot as a whole is something that I'm that crazy about. I feel like I would have shot this like 2 years ago. I don't feel like this is something up to my current standard. You know, I've had some opportunities this month to rework shots I wasn't happy with into better works, but I do not have such luxuries all of the time. At the start of October, you set out to make 31 bangers in a row, and realistically, that's just not going to happen. But in order to make some very good art, you also have to just make some bullshit sometimes. You know, some shots are just gonna be better than others. I think this shot is just some bullshit. If I had put a bit more effort in and made this one more important, and I put some more time into posing the figures better, and I also got accurate figures to do this just like in the source material, like I could have got a custom Bardock and Gohan for this. It would have been so cool. That, I should have made this shot more important. There are some shots that I just prioritize heavily and I prepare a bunch of stuff for, and this was not one of them, and I think you can really see a difference in quality between this shot and some of the other ones in the video. But it's good to know that, because now I can apply this knowledge and I can take even better photos in the next October.
Okay, day 22, white hot. So white hot photos, they have like these blank white backgrounds. It looks like an infinite white void that the character's in. I'm sure you've seen figure photos like this before, and here's the thing, okay? I've done plenty of photos like that, and I'm going to do other photos like that in this video, and at a certain point, these photos get kind of boring. I don't know, I didn't want to do one. In an act of contrarianism, I'm not going to do a white hot photo for white hot. Little Dan gave me the idea to do a Hollow Knight Silk Song photo, and he let me borrow his Nendoroid Hornet to do so thank you, Little Dan. I'll be honest though, I'm kind of a fraud. I'm too terrible at video games. I never beat the original Hollow Knight. I never played Silk Song. But from what I understand, this is like an ability the character uses where they heal using silk, and it has all these bright white effects everywhere. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Okay, so for this photo, I'm going to be using the Nendoroid Hornet from Silk Song, lent to me by our one and only Little Dan. Thank you for letting me borrow this figure, because it is quite expensive on the internet. Sometimes Nendoroids can be really tricky to photograph because they're so top heavy and they'll just fall over, but for this picture, I can just jam Hornet here into the ground and it will hold her in the air, and that works well enough. Pour one out for all of the dioramas that I've ruined over the years doing stupid shit like this. You know, it really is tough, man. I set up the shot with a black background and some rocks, also the glass in front. I'm gonna do it exactly like the Gone shot from earlier, but with white paint instead of black this time. After I painted in some of the effect, I realized it kind of looks like smoke, so I decided to layer it using my smoke machine in the photo. I quite like how these two effects work with each other. It really adds to that like foggy look I'm going for. And also 2 LEDs, one in front to light my subject and one in the back to illuminate the smoke and make it stand out. When it comes to doing smoke or rain or really any type of effect that's just in the air like this, this, you have to be careful to make sure you're lighting it or else it won't be very visible in the photo. Here's how we're looking. This turned out very nice, but I do want to color grade it so it matches the game a bit better. Before I even touch any of the color settings, I raised my contrast and my clarity. Then I made my white balance a tad green, and I made my midtones and highlights more orange. That way the shot has this very heavy green look to it, which I then desaturated my greens, so that way Hornet's mask would be white again. And then the last thing I did is I made my reds really saturated, that way Hornet's cloak would stand out a lot better. And it took a lot of fine tuning to get it to look how I wanted, but I think it was worth it in the end to make the shot match the source material. It's not every day I get to do a photo with a Nendoroid, but I always enjoy doing these. They're very fun photos to make. And I really should do more of this like paint method where I paint the effect on glass in front of the figure. I don't do this enough. It's something I got inspired by seeing an old Poncheesy video for Posing Ain't Easy.
As you can see right here, this is the entire setup. All it takes is some sort of tablet, maybe a phone could work, your laptop can work too. Anything that, you know, displays a picture and emits light. So, you know, any kind of electronic will work, but unfortunately magazines or anything like that, that won't work because obviously they don't emit light. Next you need a sheet of glass, any kind of plane of glass. I got this out of an old picture frame, honestly.
I thought it might be cool to try that with paint, and it worked out really nicely all month. All things considered, it's a shame that I'm still terrible at this video game, but hey, at least the photo turned out pretty cool.
Day 21 Blackout. It's supposed to be kind of like the opposite of the white hot theme from the previous segment. So I was thinking something from Bleach. You know, actually it doesn't really make sense now that I say it out loud, because if you're bleaching something, it's turning white, not blacking it out.
So I was thinking about using figures for the two spirits behind Ichigo, but the more I thought about it, the more I decided on just doing cutouts, because it would be way more accurate and it would look like the actual panel. I decided not to use the background and I just cut out the characters. The setup for this is genuinely just my light box and these metal stands from earlier with the cutouts on them. Also one single lonesome LED on the left. It truly cannot get easier than this. Oh, I forgot to mention, but I got this Ichigo figure from Artistic Toaster to borrow just to take this shot, so thank you very much, my friend. He also did a really cool shot with this figure with a custom head from My Custom Figures. This is a great photo. You guys should go follow this guy. On the editing side of this photo, there's nothing too interesting going on, but the goal when doing a white background shot like this is always to make the white like a perfect white color. Like if you color pick it, it's just pure white. So a lot of contrast and lower saturation, and that's kind of it. It can be good to mask the background as well and just raising exposure and then gradienting it off the figure. These type of bright white background shots are called white hot photos, and it's kind of funny that I did a white hot shot for Blackout and then I just did a different photo for white hot, but I think this does work. You know, there is something to be said for just a classic bright white background photo. And I mean, if you've read the Bleach manga, you know that Kubo loves his white backgrounds. Honestly, the way he uses negative space is one of my favorite parts of his artwork. And it was pretty cool to use the manga panels cut out in this photo as well. I did kind of screw up cutting out Old Man Zangetsu's feet. They do look pretty weird, but aside from that, I'm pretty happy with how this not very ambitious photo turned out. It's quite simple, but I like it.
Okay, so it's time to wrap back around and do day 5, Everybody Loves a Hero. I love a classical depiction of heroism, like Octoyber 2024, second place, Cap Lives did this awesome photo of Captain America talking to this kid in his doorstep. That's awesome. That's the type of thing that I want to do. When I think of heroism, I think of Spider-Man, I think of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and I have a very specific photo idea in mind.
So the goal was to make a bedroom that a fan of Spider-Man would be living in. Nothing too special. I imagine it's like a kid, maybe he has homework or something. But the main focus was going to be a drawing. I wanted a drawing of Spider-Man. For the homework, I found someone on Reddit's math notes that I was just able to use as a cutout. And for the drawing, I wanted something like that scene in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie where he draws up the costume. And I asked my friend TJ Grimble to redraw that, and they cooked. This is exactly what I needed. So big shout out to TJ. This detail is definitely my favorite part of the picture. Oh, also TJ took this pretty cool Superman photo for Octoyber, so go give them a follow. I put everything into a Word document and I printed it off and cut it up to use as props. On this shot, I'm using the same diorama that I've been using all month as a room, but this time I'm just using the window. I started setting up the essentials. I wanted the drawing to be the main focus of this shot on the desk, with Spider-Man posed up on the window looking in. The lamp was also a thing I knew I wanted to use, because it's like, that's exactly the type of thing a kid would have in their bedroom, is a big ass blue desk lamp. When I was making this, I had a very specific visual in mind, and I thought about it all day before I took the shot, and whenever I have a super vivid image like that in my head, it makes shooting the photo actually very easy, because I know exactly what I need. Next, I needed a sky. This skyline is a part of a NECA building diorama, and I use it in a lot of different photos. I lit the outside of the shot primarily with this lamp from earlier. I actually made the sun in the sky by just pointing the lamp at the background, and it shows as a reflection. As far as methods to make the sun in your background, that's kind of as good as you can get. Also, this light over here lights the inside of the room, and I have this other LED which I just held with my hand while I shot the photo. It was very important to me that you were able to tell the difference between the lighting inside and outside the room. That's one huge detail that I borrowed from that Cap Lives photo that I mentioned inspired this, is, you know, you can really see that, like, this is the inside and the light from outside is coming in the doorway. I love that. I wanted to do something similar. I decorated the desk with all sorts of paper and comics, and quick note, Spidey isn't even touching the window here. He's like half an inch or so off, and you can't tell at all in the final product, but it helps with the composition. I'll go more in detail on exactly how I decided on this framing in a moment, but I did want to mention it here. And yeah, that's pretty much everything going on with this setup. I was going to continue experimenting with this, but I accidentally knocked everything over, so I just called it a day.
I'm currently shooting. I think I might be done shooting.
And honestly, I think I stopped at a great point. This is a very satisfying picture in how it turned out. I wanted this photo to be sharp, but also for Spidey to be just enough out of focus. So I played with different apertures until I got the desired look I wanted. I ended up going with f10. Over in Lightroom, all I really changed is a pinch more saturation, and I added a vignette. One cool thing I was able to do with this shot is I hid the stand that is holding Spidey up on the edge of the building, and it blends in super well into the background unless you're trying to look for it. Also, I adore how the window looks here with all the dust and reflections. It just looks so good on camera. That was one of my favorite pieces of the shot. I even tried to do the lighting where you can see the glare on the desk as the sun comes through the window. It's those little details I was really paying attention to when I did this. I also paid a lot of mind to how the composition was gonna look. Specifically, if you split the frame into fourths, you can see that Spider-Man is taking up specifically that top right quarter of the frame, and that's why I have him not touching the glass. That way I could size out exactly how much of the frame he would be taking up. Fun fact, your eyes look at things in kind of like an F shape. So the idea is that at first glance, the first thing you're gonna see is Spider-Man out of focus in the top of the image. And obviously you know it's Spider-Man, it's a super recognizable character, but he's not in focus, so your eyes move down. And as you continue looking at the image, the next thing you're gonna see is the drawing and the comics inside of the room. The point of view is specifically set behind the window and you're looking out at Spider-Man. But if that's Spider-Man and this is the Marvel Universe, why would there be Spider-Man comics? You know, that doesn't really make sense. That's something you might see in real life, not in a photo in a comic book universe. And as you hone in on the subject of the photo, you'll realize it's not about the character himself, but instead the drawing that this kid made of Spider-Man. It's the center of the frame and it's in focus. That's the subject. Because even if this photo isn't actually set in the Marvel Universe, and Spider-Man is just a fictional character that you read about in comics and he's not actually real, it doesn't matter. This photo puts you in the perspective of a normal person, a kid who is a big fan of Spider-Man, the character you read about in comics and even felt inspired to draw yourself. And as you're sitting at your desk, you know, maybe it's after school someday and you can see the sun setting and you should be doing your homework, but you're not, you're drawing. And as you look up past your drawing and out your window, you imagine Spider-Man is really out there. Spider-Man represents the obligation that because you have the ability to be a kind and helpful person, it means that you should. And anyone can see themselves in that ideal. And that's something that transcends the art form. That's what I was trying to convey with this photo, is that, like, you know, you can take these ideas and you can make them real.
Day 11, what do you meme? Now, there's always a meme-related theme in the October list every single time. I kind of think this is one of the weaker puns. My favorite one was Meme Me Up Scotty from a couple years ago. I think that was where they peaked with these, personally. You know, these can be tricky. It's hard to come up with something that's funny when the point is to come up with something that's funny. I did open Instagram, though, and I saw one of those memes from Death Note where Light's like writing like not just the names of characters, but entire things he wants erased.
So I got a hold of these two dudes and I asked them to do the voices of Ryuk and Light in this video, but before I even get to that, I want to shoot the actual figure photography part of this. And this segment's going to be kind of weird because there's not really a whole lot to talk about. I just took these very basic pictures of Game Toys Light and this bootleg Ryuk figure that I plan to edit into the video. It actually is just a black piece of fabric as the background, and that's the entire setup. I did actually put a bit of effort into the shot at the end of the meme. I got out my grass floor and I found the original picture on Google, which I pulled up as a background on my TV, and then just a whole bunch of lights. Nothing really special here. I just wanted it to be bright. And you know, as far as figure photography goes, that is all I have for this segment. I got some recordings back from both Diego and Bran. Make sure to go follow those guys, by the way. This would not have been possible in the least bit without them. They really made this work. And after a bit of editing everything together, here is the final product of all three of our efforts.
Bad QC.
Light, that's not how
Tariff. Con exclusive.
Light, that's not how the fucking book works.
This fucking leg joint. Marvel Legends.
Holy shit, Light, you are right!
Day 12, War Never Changes. Okay, so I had a whole idea. I was going to do the Rose Bomb scene from Hunter x Hunter. If you've seen that anime, you know that scene, you know why that would be so perfect for this, but I just couldn't pull it off in time. I couldn't get the custom figure that I needed to do that in the mail in time to make this happen. So instead I decided to do something completely different. I was thinking like War Never Changes. That's actually a great theme. There's so many like cool like war related ideas I feel like with that. I was thinking Star Wars. There's this one page in a Star Wars comic. I haven't read the comic, but I've seen the page where it's Obi-Wan and he's as an old man reminiscing about his time in the Clone Wars and how it's just like how things used to be. You know, literally, war never changes. I thought that is a perfect idea that I came up with last minute.
Okay, so despite the short notice, I actually already had pretty much everything I needed to do this shot. I didn't have to buy anything, except there is one thing, but I'll get to that. I'm gonna be using the Black Series Clone Wars Obi-Wan. I'm pretty sure this guy was like a Walmart exclusive or some bullshit, but he still holds up pretty good. I do like this figure. The diorama is from 78 points. I'm gonna have him here on this rock hitting the Thorfinn pose. But after I set this up, I thought the scene felt kind of generic and I wanted it to feel more like Star Wars. So I went and made some Republic flags on printer paper. I made a point to dirty them up and rip them, and then I taped them onto a paintbrush to use as a flagpole, and there you go. Very easy homemade flag accessory. And then I grabbed this gorgeous sky image off the internet to use as a background. I used a couple of LEDs and desk lamps for this picture, specifically casting shadows on the left side of the character. I shot this with a low f-stop. I wanted most of the environment to be very soft and out of focus. I really liked how the original page is formatted, and I wanted to do something similar with just a bunch of panels. So the big two panels I shot were one that's vertical with Cody standing next to him, and also one that's more zoomed in on his face. I also got this back shot with the sun in front of him, which, by the way, I lit this shadow on one side of him earlier so it would match with this shot, because I knew that this shot would look cool if he was shadowed like this, so that was the idea. Now, one very big problem that did come up is I thought I would have at least one A New Hope Obi-Wan in my collection, some old Black Series or some SHF, but I didn't. I didn't have this figure. I was shooting this photo on the 11th, okay? The photo was for day 12. It has to be ready for tomorrow, and I didn't have one of the figures I needed. This is a pretty bad spot to be in, because it's not like I could just skip this one panel. It's probably the most important panel of the entire page, because it's Obi-Wan at an older age reflecting on his life and thinking that war never changes. I feel like this page loses all of its meaning if I don't have that one panel. And like I said, this is due tomorrow, so I have to come up with a solution in 1 day's time. And I got really lucky, okay? I bought the 3.75-inch vintage collection Obi-Wan on Amazon overnight immediate delivery, the wonders of the modern world. So yeah, after I got off work, I shot a very basic picture of this stupid figure, and that works. We made it, we put it all together. Look at that, look how beautiful this page is. Honestly, if I really wanted, I could have just done this single shot right here, and that would have been good enough for a whole post. But why would I make something that's good enough when I could make it great instead? Like, I put a lot of time and money into this hobby for the same reason. I try my best at this stuff simply for the sake of making better photos. So let's make a better photo. And that's how we end up here. Like, it took a lot of effort, but it turned out about as good as I could possibly ask for. It's probably the closest call I had all month. Like, I was very worried I wouldn't have a shot ready for today, and I was gonna get the Octoyber game over screen. But I pulled this together at the last minute, and honestly, it's one of my favorite works I did all month. I'm very satisfied with this one.
Day 29 into the Gamerverse, and okay, we need to have a chat, okay? Podcheesy and the rest of the ACBA podcast. I appreciate all you guys do. You know, the podcast is awesome, and I love this event for the community every year. I love Octoyber. I look forward to it all year. And you know, there's a lot of great themes on this list, but Into the Gamerverse is not, I don't think that's one of the great themes personally. I think that one, you know, I like the idea of a video games related theme. I'm not really crazy about Into the Gamerverse. I'll be honest, it's just, it's not really my favorite name for one of these. I think it's a little bit corny. Personally, that's all. No hate, but I'm not crazy about this one, you know. The video game I want to do a shot from is Half-Life. I'm thinking a shot of NECA, Gordon Freeman in Black Mesa, you know, like Half-Life 1. Such a great video game, especially for its time.
This 78 points diorama is an architectural feat equivalent to that of the 16th Chapel. All the panels and the details and the paintwork, it's gorgeous. It's perfect to use as the hallways of Black Mesa. I got the NECA Gordon Freeman. This guy is probably my favorite terrible figure because, like, he sucks, but it's well detailed enough, and Gordon Freeman doesn't need to pose a whole lot. Who knew that Octoyber would have me shooting not one, but 2 NECA figures this month? I decorated the surrounding area with all sorts of rubble and also this dead scientist. I always think of that one room in Half-Life before you go into the freezer where there's that scientist getting eaten by zombies, man. What a game. Like, there's just so many little memorable moments like that. The idea for this shot is that the room is right after the resonance cascade happens, so I went and actually just pulled up that part of the game on my TV, and I boosted the exposure a bunch so it'd be bright enough to use as a background for the shot. I added this orange LED coming from the doorway, that way there's something in the setup that blends the background with the tangible parts of the scene. Like, if you look at it hard enough, it still looks fake, but the orange light does a good job of making it fit better. Also, these 2 desk lamps are to light the rest of the environment. Now, I could have possibly called it here, but I felt like the shot needed something a little bit extra. So I printed out this little health pack and put it on the wall, exactly like what you would see in the original game. I also put the Black Mesa logo on this barrel, and because the background I'm using is the actual game with animations going on, I made sure to get a bunch of takes so I could pick the best part of the animation to have in my shot. Here's the picture, and man, this figure is fucking ugly, dude, without the glasses. Okay, before I shot this, I did spend like an hour looking for the glasses, but I couldn't find them anywhere, so I just had to go without them. And you know, it doesn't cover up how ugly he is, but we don't even know if Gordon had his helmet on in Half-Life 1, let alone if he had glasses, so don't shoot me. But yeah, I made some big color changes in Lightroom. I mainly just made the shot more blue, and then I added some rich oranges on the color wheels. And you know, aside from that one detail of Gordon missing his glasses, I really like how this came out. I really liked coming up with all the references to the game and even using the game as a background, and this diorama is just so good, and I've never seen a Half-Life photo in the ACBA community, so just in general, it was pretty cool to make this.
Day 14, Multiverse Constant. So Steins Gate is an anime about time travel, and I'm not going to spoil any specific details of the story. You should go watch that show. It's an amazing story. But there is a multiversal constant that is connected to a stopwatch breaking.
Most important part of this picture is the stopwatch, which I have this little 1/12 scale pocket watch, and it does happen to already be broken, so that's perfect. Figma never got around to doing my Yuri, which is actually a huge problem because she's the subject aspect of this photo. So as a placeholder, I'm going to use a different Figma and only have her arm in frame. The idea is to have A.C.B.A reacting to her holding the broken watch from the back of the picture. Before I go into these, I usually like to have an idea in mind for what I want to do before the shot, because even if a shot is really tricky to pull off and will take me hours, as long as I have a clear vision, I can put up with it. But when I don't have a very clear idea for what I'm doing, it can get really messy and annoying, which is kind of how this one was. I had a very vague idea of what I was going to do going in. In other words, I kind of just made it up as I went. After a little bit of screwing around, I came up with this design for a little office in the background, and in the foreground I have this cutout of the quote that repeats over and over again in the anime. Anyone who's seen this show knows how many times you hear these exact words over and over again. It really is a multiversal constant. This was the first shot that I made, which I then color graded and cropped in Lightroom. Very, very blue picture here. Also a mask on the text to make it brighter and not colored. Some of the later segments in this video, I talk more about this, but I did a lot of text bubbles in Octoyber, and I did them all in this exact same way. I also shot this single panel, which I was able to combine with the main shot to make the whole picture. And I already know one day I would like to redo this. Steins Gate is just one of those shows that's like so special, and I think I probably could have come up with a better Steins Gate photo idea for this, or executed this a bit better. Like, it would have been cool to recreate a shot from the opening, or recreate this scene in the visual novel even. I think things like that would probably translate way better into figure photography. Remaking this scene the way I did, with kind of a vague idea of what was going on, was a bit of an uphill battle. However, the paneling turned out solid. It's very legible, it's very easy to tell what I'm trying to get across with this photo, especially if you know the source material. So I don't consider this shot a failure, it's just not my favorite. Okay, so now it's time for probably the most important single post that I did all month. Bit of context, it's currently the 16th of October, and I've been able to catch up on days 1 through 23 thanks to the extra time given before the month, as well as a couple close calls which you've seen throughout the video. But none of that would compare to the week I was about to go through. You see, the reason why I grinded all month was so I would have a 7-day period which I could exclusively dedicate to this one post. And this is absolutely the hardest figure photography project I have ever worked on. I'm going to attempt to create a 20-page manga-style fight sequence as one post. I have done similar stuff in the past, but I've never done one that is 20 pages long, and also not on this type of time crunch. The scene I'm going to be recreating is from the movie End of Evangelion. It is a 1 versus 9 bloodbath where Asuka has just about 3 minutes to take down a whole army of mass-produced Evas coming to kill her. The fight takes place on land, in water, has multiple wide shots with multiple enemies being fought all at once, and my goal is to string it all together into one big figure photo sequence. But before we can get to work, there's a couple preparations that had to be made. I already talked about how I needed to get ahead on photos so I'd have a solid week to just spend working on this, but I also needed a diorama, so I got in contact with Toastburnt Dark to see if he could make me something in time for this, and he absolutely delivered. What I required was a big area that I could shoot from whatever angle. The floor needed to be green, kind of look like grass, not super detailed. It would never be a very important part of any of the shots. It just needed to fill space in case I did need to show the floor.
Pretty much whenever I've done one of these big fight scene series, it's like, I need a big area to work out of. I need freedom so I can shoot it from multiple angles for all the different panels and stuff. My canvas essentially just extends to the width of my TV, which is 65 inches. So I have a very special package here. These are also important. I'll get to these in a second. Like, very last minute, I was like, can you make me this diorama? And he was like, I guess.
So Toast made me these 25-inch squares of green painted foam that I was able to stick miniature trees into, and that worked out wonderfully.
And as you can see here, it works out pretty well to just convey like a lot of depth with the different sized trees. I'd say that some of them are a little bit too tall though.
As for backgrounds, I have my 65-inch TV, which I pulled up images from the scene in the movie that I could use as backgrounds. Now, as far as the actual figures I was going to be taking photos of, I decided to do everything with Revoltech. In 2007, Revoltech made this End of Evangelion Unit 2, and they also made the mass-produced Eva. So my goal for this was to army build 9 mass-produced Evas, because, you know, there are shots like this opening shot where they're all circling. I wanted to do that with 9 separate tangible figures flying overhead. It was going to be really difficult, both to actually photograph and also to acquire the figures to do that, but I was able to use Bai to scout out some good deals on auctions and listings, and also got really lucky shipping times, and I was also able to source some parts and different figures from people in the US, so I was able to get 9. It was a pain in the ass to do, but I did it. I managed to make it happen. Oh, and one more thing I needed is I wanted an Asuka figure to get some reaction panels in this, and I decided on using this Revoltech Asuka, not because I wanted to, this figure fucking sucks, but I had to because it's the only Asuka in her classic outfit that has multiple different faces. There's this other Revoltech Asuka in the classic outfit, it only has one face, and every other figure is just in a different outfit. Okay, so quick inventory check before we begin. As of October 15th, I had the diorama from Toast Burnt Dark, I had Revoltech Unit 2 from 2007 based on the movie, as well as 9 Revoltech mass-produced Evas. I also had this Revoltech Asuka, and one more thing to note, I got the Figma pod that she would sit in from Gabe. Shout out Gabe, go follow that guy, he's awesome. And yeah, with everything ready to go, on the following day, on the 16th, I got to work. First things first, I did a bit of planning in my notes of what I wanted each page to look like, so I kind of just came up with where we'd begin, where we'd end, where key events would happen on what pages, to make sure that I would have room in 20 pages to show the entire fight. I took a lot of inspiration from the manga version of this fight as well, because there's a lot of stuff I could grab from there and just kind of translate into my own work. I began shooting on page 4. I just wanted to cut right to the action. The first shot I did was Unit 2 grabbing one of the MP's heads, as well as a close-up shot of this as well to use as a panel. In the original scene, Unit 2 grabs this guy and sort of hurdles over him, crushing his head and then lifting up the body. So I then shot more panels to help convey that motion. I then went into Photoshop and made mock-up pages, and I won't go into insane detail about every little bit of this because it would be kind of monotonous. Like I showed earlier in the video, I essentially just use my pen tool to cut out where I want panels to be, and then I use a black stroke to create the black border there. Honestly, maybe one day I make a video that is just a paneling tutorial. That might be kind of cool, so let me know if you'd want to see that. Here's my first draft for pages 4 and 5, and I wasn't really happy with this, and I sent it out for some criticism, and the two main things I heard back were that these were too clustered and it was hard to follow what was happening. And this got me really thinking about pacing, so I decided to reshoot some parts, and I made page 4 3 panels and page 5 5 panels. I think these changes make it easier to look at, it makes it more organized, and it's just easier to follow. It's just a smoother read. Specifically, the small shot of her jumping followed by a bigger panel of the foot hitting the ground. I think that's a more impactful thing to read. It feels more explosive. And because of the new crop, some of these panels have just more room on the page to stand out. Also, I try not to cut stuff off in my photography, but the way I cropped Unit 2 at the end of this last panel almost makes you want to turn the page to see what happens next, to see what's cut off there. I know I'm getting kind of caught up in some like gross details of how I'm doing this, but I think it's important to show that because this is something I've never done before, and all these little things are lessons that I'm learning as I go. Okay, moving on. For page 6, I made it this huge shot of Unit 2 holding an MP over her head. I accompanied it on the page with a couple panels to show the, its back getting cracked open as well as blood spilling over her face. I got this effect by getting a close-up shot while holding blood effects close to my camera lens. And I was so happy how pages 4 through 6 looked together, I decided to go back and do page 3. I needed to get Unit 2 running up to an MP with Asuka screaming. I got this nice motion blur for the run by moving the ground in front of the figure as I shot the picture, and then I got a shot of Asuka piloting, and I made sure to use a cutout for her screaming. It's a kind of random detail, but for some reason I really wanted all the text in this post to be printed out on paper, so I did cutouts for everything. It was a pain in the ass to do. After making this picture of Unit 2 about to jump onto the MP, I paired it with the other 3 pages, and we got something really good going on here. I like this 4-page sequence quite a bit. We are also now 1/5 done of the page count, technically. For page 7, I took some inspiration from the manga, where there's this really nice panel of her sitting in the pod with bloodstains all around the cockpit, and she's talking about some Erste, or however you say this. I don't speak German. My method for this is just spilling fake Halloween blood that I can wash off over a plastic container, and then I added a little text bubble here. This is one of my favorite cutouts I think I've ever done, honestly. It's very nice. And to finish the page off, I added these panels of the first MP dead on the ground, as well as her looking up to see her next victim. And that works as a good transition to the next fight. Unfortunately, in the manga, it cuts to this bum-ass kid crying, so, I couldn't exactly, do it exactly how it is in the series, but we're doing our adaptation of it, And before you say anything, not that you can, because you're at home on your computer, and I'm the one making the video, but I know this Asuka figure is chopped. I already explained this is the only one I could use. It's unfortunate. If I could have used the SHF, I just would have. Life is life. It didn't come out for another 2 months. Fuck my life, I'm only saying this because I got quite a few bits of negative feedback about having to use this figure, and I don't know, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but I think it looks nice. I think it has a charm to it, okay? Anyways, back on topic, that makes for a finished pages 3 to 7, which is a great progress for my first day. I think I started actually shooting photos around 3 a.m., and I went until 3 p.m. when I had to go to work and do my real job. I know, it's so sad. I can't just sit at home and take photos all day. I actually have to go to my responsibilities and leave my house. It's so sad. Anyways, I got off work, right back to shooting. I wanted to have Asuka running over and tackling the next MP into water, so I shot both these panels. That's gift wrap paper I'm using as water. I tried to recreate that like sparkling water type of effect you'd see in old animation where there'd be like light hitting it, so I lit it from below to get that type of look going on. I made sure to put another MP behind Asuka to set up the next sequence, and oh, I also reused this screaming cutout from page 3. I reused a couple cutouts throughout this, and you know, it's just a time saving measure, okay? I'm not lazy, okay? I'm not lazy. There's one thing you could tell throughout this. I'm not lazy, I'm efficient, okay? And this is one of those things where I'm just being efficient. I'm reusing cutouts I already made. What, you'd rather I waste more paper for my stupid figure photos? You asshole. Should I take a fucking private jet to my printer as well? Anyways, so that is pages 3 through 8 done, which is like a quarter of the page count. We're making big progress out here. Next page is gonna be her pulling out the prog knife and splitting this guy's head open. First thing I made was a panel that shows the tackle landing, splashing the water everywhere. That way I could complete the motion that started on the previous page. I got these close shots of the knife being deployed, as well as this shot of Asuka smiling. However, after putting it all together, I decided that it didn't look very good. I feel like there's a sense of force missing here. It doesn't actually feel that impactful. So I went back and I added this extra panel of the knife coming out the other end, and to me that shows the motion a lot better here. I didn't record the whole process, but it took a lot of revamping to get this page 9 to look how I wanted, and in the end, I think it could have still been better. It's probably my least favorite page in the whole post. Anyways, page 10. Technically speaking, when you're reading through, this will be the halfway point of the post. The goal with this page is to show her getting up from the first 2 kills and transition into the next part of the fight. I got this shot of her standing over the 2 corpses and looking at another Ava in the distance, and then to show her running over, I shot these panels of her dashing from different angles. I also printed out these 2 cutouts with dialogue of her going, "Oh, that's 2," and "next." For page 11, I began with the main panel of her slicing the arm off of the one she just grabbed. Then I made these 2 accompanying panels of her grabbing the wrist and pulling her knife out, which flows nicely into the main panel of the slice. Then the thing in the original scene is that her blade like shatters here, and for better or worse, the knife accessory I had was actually breaking, so I made this shot that compiles a couple pictures of the blade around the handle to make it look like it's splitting into pieces. It's kind of a weird technique I did here. I probably could go in more in detail on it, but I pretty much just took multiple photos and erased parts to make it look like multiple pieces. I also made sure to frame it similarly to the panel above, so it almost looks like the camera is zooming in while continuing the motion. I feel like this might be the most fluid page in the entire post, honestly, as far as how the motion goes from panel to panel. Anyways, at this point, it was roughly 7 p.m. on the 17th. I started work at 3 a.m. on the 16th. I was tired, man. It had been several days of being awake, pretty much only working on this or going to work, so I decided to get some sleep. Anyways, I woke back up at 4 a.m. on the 18th, well rested, no time wasted. I'm on a mission all month, but especially this week. I wanted this series to be the best October post ever, okay? I was really aiming for it. Page 12, I have her react to the knife breaking, followed by a shot of her being pissed. And then the Ava reaches up grabbing her, which she takes none of, and reacts by crushing its neck as the main panel. Also, 1 extra panel at the end just to show a close-up. Oh yeah, also some cutouts for the dialogue, and honestly, this 11 and 12 page sequence is one of my favorite bits in the whole project. It just flows so nicely with the dialogue, and the combat feels really hard hitting here. However, I struggled quite a bit with the section after this. So in the original, she looks up, right? She sees another Ava falling on top of her. She rolls out of the way, crushes the one underneath her, and now she's surrounded in a 1v3 where she picks up a sword to replace her knife. This was a really complicated motion that even in the manga is kind of hard to look at, and it takes up like 2 pages. For my version, I simplified it down a lot. I made sure to have her looking up, seeing the Ava falling, getting pushed out of the way, and picking up a sword. I really stuck to my guns here and tried to make it as minimal as possible. Like, if I really wanted, I could probably show every nuance of that motion, but, you know, it just wouldn't look good. There would be too many panels, it would be a mess. Anyways, I then shot this main panel of her facing against all 3 of them, as well as these 2 shots of her readying her sword and going, "You can't beat me." And overall, I like this page 13. I don't love it, I like it. Really tricky sequence here, but I think this was the best I'm capable of in doing it in 1 page. I really liked the idea of keeping this to be a 20 20-page post. I didn't want to do multiple posts. I wanted it to be one 20-page, page 1 to page 20, all one thing, and I wanted to stick to that. So sometimes there's sacrifices like this I have to make, but, you know, I think ultimately it's worth it in the end, because the final product should be more concise, ultimately. For page 14, I made this 3-panel sequence of her swinging down, lobbing the first guy's head off, and spinning around to cut the next dude in the stomach. Originally, I just was gonna have her screaming, but I ended up going with a different text bubble. I thought this was a really natural spot to put this bit of characterization for Asuka. I felt like without text here talking about her mother, she would just be some angry drone fighting these guys, and I wanted her character in my series to be a bit more than that. The plan was never to give her like a whole flashback or anything, but if there's parts in the series where the character Asuka would naturally react a certain type of way, I would like to include that.
I cannot be defeated! Not with Mama watching after me!
If you've seen this movie, you know exactly like what that dialogue means and how important that is. I don't want to force it down the viewer's throat, but I do think stuff like that is essential to telling a story like this. It wouldn't be Evangelion without hype moments and trauma. Anyways, if they're cutting the second one in half, I had her look over at a third guy and stab right through him, and the method here was just a huge clump of white sticky tack into the figure, that way it looks like he's being ripped apart. I used this sticky tack effect later on, and it works just very nicely. I think it's a very effective way to show damage from the battle without always having to use blood. Then next, for a 3-panel sequence at the bottom of page 15 to show her getting tackled onto the ground by the Ava. Keep in mind, this is the 7th enemy out of the 9, so we're actually nearing the end of the main portion. I'm not too crazy about this page. I could have done a better job showing the motion at the bottom without using 3 whole panels. It could have looked nicer, I think. Anyways, happy with my spoils from the 18th. I decided to go to sleep and I would revisit in the morning. Okay, so in the original anime, there is a part of the fight where Asuka is tackled and she shoots out these spiky things into the Ava that's on top of her. I thought this would be a good section to include that at, with her being mid-tackle and all. I even have this swappable part that comes with the figure for this exact thing, except it doesn't come with any spiky pieces or any effect that looks like that. So after a bit of thinking, I decided on changing it out. So instead of doing spike effects, I would do this Mezco rocket effect and have her just blow this guy up with a plain old explosion. I got panels of the shoulder opening up, a rocket shooting out, and an explosion cooking this guy in the air. And to top it off, I got 2 more panels, one of Asuka pulling the trigger and one of the MP she just killed dead on the ground. And that made for a pretty solid page 16, but unfortunately, the trial and error of getting that right took too long, and I had to go to work for the day after only finishing 1 page, which was not exactly ideal.
You know, okay, I won't recommend that you spend all of your time before bed, before you go to work, spend your entire day taking figure photos where you can. I'm not gonna say that. There's more to life than just taking photos, obviously. But like, if I get a really good idea that requires a lot of work, then I will simply invest enough time where it would be entirely unrealistic for me to not succeed. But I try to maintain balance, you know, because I think it's important. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about this photo series the entire time I was at work or doing anything that wasn't involving taking it.
But when I got home, I got right to work and I began working on ending the series as much as I could that night. I decided I wasn't gonna sleep until she was dead. So we have 2 targets left for her to fight. I made this 3-panel motion of her running over, grabbing one of them, and then throwing them into the one behind her. And to add to this page, I made a panel of the clock ticking down because, you know, there is a time limit to this fight after all. And to accompany that, I made some text about how she has less than a minute left and she's not gonna make it, you know, just to build some suspense near the end here. And I just love how this page 17 turned out. It's a great bridge to that final few pages of the story. For the next page, I wanted to adapt the part where she punches through both Avas and crushes their cores, spilling blood everywhere as the timer ticks all the way down. First things first, I have a shot of her winding up a punch, and I find that showing the before and after of an action like this can be very effective because it lets you, the viewer, sort of fill in the gap there. Like if I show you point A and point C, you already know what's going in the middle. It's a point B. So I'll have you, the viewer, fill in the blank. And I think whatever you imagine goes in between them is probably cooler than if I bloated the page by putting an extra panel there. Then we use the sticky tack method and sandwich the arm between the torso and legs. And then I set up the other Ava with some flesh exposed and blood spewing out, and just, man, what an image. I truly love how I translated this from the original scene into a figure photo on this page. It's grotesque and it just looks cool. Like, this is the shit I was really looking forward to doing when I decided on this project. I decided that having a reaction panel at the bottom here was pretty crucial, and the Rebel Tech is not gonna cut it. I need a screaming face, because she's screaming in this scene. She's letting out this violent scream, and I grabbed the Figma and I got got a close-up shot of her screaming with blood coming out as well. I was only really able to use the Figma here by only showing the face, because like I said earlier, the outfit is not accurate, so this just barely works. Also, I made sure to get a shot where the blood was covering one eye. I thought that just went hard. Also made sure to show the clock at 10 seconds left as she kills the last 2 targets. And as I shot this, I reached midnight, meaning it's officially the 20th of the month, and we survived 2/3 of October. Or so I thought. You see, over the previous 4 days of work, I have had scheduled posts uploading the shots you already saw me make earlier in the video. But somehow, I just let day 20 slip by, and I never prepared anything for that day. I don't know how that got through the cracks, but I did make a day 20. I'll go into that after this, but just know that was a thing that I had to do. I had to stop working on this, take a different photo, and then return to it. Okay, so back to the main project. This was page 18, which means I need to wrap this up across the next 2 pages. So first, I simply wanted a shot of the spear flying in. This piece is pretty different from in the anime, with it being a sword that transforms into a spear there, and it's like, I don't know, I didn't want to do all that. In the manga, I know that the circumstances are different, but it is just a spear that flies in, and I decided to draw more inspiration from that. It's just one of those things that it would be more concise, and it would look better in my photography. I edited out the stand, and I added some motion blur. I put a very small blurry version of this at the bottom of page 18 to tie things together a bit better, and then I started the painstaking process of trying to do this shot of her blocking the lance with her AT field. This fucking photo was horrible. This sucked to work on. I genuinely spent 3 hours shooting this with different angles and effects trying to get it right. I'm just not even gonna go into a lot of the process, but I eventually decided on using this specific AT field from the Robot Spirits Awakened Unit 1. I needed to get the entire effect in frame, as well as the spear and the figure, and it just had to be such a wide shot, and I didn't say this initially, but I don't have my camera with my wide-angle lens to do this. I loaned it to a friend, so I was trying to use my kit lens to do this, which is just the wrong tool for the job. Anyways, this is what I came up with, and this shot really just made use of the entire diorama. I can't thank Toast Burnt Dark enough. This would not have been possible without him. This is a great job. He got me this on time, and it was so useful. I genuinely could not do it without him. Couple other things for this page. I got this panel of Asuka's eyes seeing the spear coming. I also made sure to get a piece of text here if we're going like, oh shit, that's the lance. I also used scotch tape on the effect to get this panel of the AT field crumbling underneath the spear. I don't know why I don't have any footage of me doing that, but that's what this is. This is scotch tape, and I taped the top of the spear on, and it looks like it's cracking. And one more detail here is I reused the cutout from the day 4 post I did where Bane is breaking Batman's back. That like cracking onomatopoeia effect, I reused that here, and that works pretty nicely, honestly. That ties the whole thing together for me. Now, at this point in the day, it was pretty deep into the morning on the 20th, and I wasn't planning on sleeping until I did that page 20. Until the last page of this was done, I was not going to bed. First thing I shot was the spear in her head. This was the money shot. This is something I had to get right. I attached the spear there with sticky tack. I shot the panel in 1x1 and I cropped it just to get a good idea of like how it would look in the final image. Then I got to work on the shot of her lying all the way back, and this is a very famous frame. I put quite a bit of time into trying to get this right. I then put these 2 panels together, but it felt like something was missing. The original anime shows Asuka letting out a blood-curdling scream from the cockpit as the clock hits 0 and the spear pierces her. And I knew that was just way too essential to not do, so I got to work on trying to remake this frame as best I could, and surprisingly, the figure hits this pose super well. I remade the background in Photoshop, and I was just about to shoot the photo when I fucking lost power. At noon, it is the middle of the day, and I lose power, meaning I can't light the setup to shoot the photo. I had to wait with this setup for like 2 hours to actually go and take the shot. I deadass don't know what I did. I didn't go to sleep, but I stayed up another 2 hours. I don't know what the fuck I was doing, but the show must go on. I got power back, I shot the photo, boom, got a shot of the clock as it hit 0, boom, reusing the scream cutout from page 4, boom, and then I even got this motion blurred image of the spear flying in to really complete the motion to get your eyes to zoom across the page. This is exactly what I wanted my page 20 to look like. It's impactful, it's emotional, it's violent. Like when I look at this and I read the text, it plays the scream from the original anime in my head. Like I read it in my, it's like an image I can hear. That's what this feels like when I look at it. Y'all should be glad they only let me do 20 pages. I I would have done a scene after this where she's getting eaten alive. I would have done it with red putty. It would be crazy and cool looking and awesome. And with that, I had pages 3 through 20 done. It's all kind of a blur after this. I'm not really sure what happened, but I woke up behind my camera around 6 p.m. that night. It was already dark out. You know, I ruined my sleep schedule, but I think it was kind of worth it. We made a lot of progress. Now all I had left to do was pages 1 and 2. For page 1, the plan all along has just been to do a single panel, just like one big page spread with the Avas circling above, like this shot from the anime. The manga panel is also beautiful, by the way, but I don't want to do the extra panels on the side. I just want the shot of them circling. I knew this would be incredibly hard to do, especially since I set the goal of using all 9 practical figures. Like, I have 9 of these Avas for a reason. I'm going to use all 9 of them in a single shot. First things first, though, I set up Unit 2 in this forest. And okay, so the method I had to suspend them all in the air really just boils down to a piece of glass on top of these file boxes. I knew going in that this was going to be a pretty bullshit setup, but it was pretty nerve-wracking. I didn't expect the glass to be super flimsy like it was here. I truly did feel like it was gonna break. However, I did get it to work. I was able to have a scenario here where, like, the camera's pointed up, you don't see the glass because it doesn't show up on camera, and there's a figure on top of the glass that looks like it's floating. Like, this was working. However, I ran into a problem where there simply wasn't enough room on top to get the Avas in the nice circular shape like I wanted. So I grabbed a second piece of glass. These are just sides of an IKEA Detolf, by the way, that I took apart to do this. And that for sure gave me the room I needed. Like, look at that. That's a good circle. But it created a couple of new problems, because now I had this ugly split in the middle, and it kind of layered it and made the figures in the back really blurry and ugly. I came to the conclusion I needed to cram all the figures onto one piece of glass. It just would not work with 2. I couldn't get it to look good. It created too many problems for me. It took some very, very precise positioning, but I managed to get this picture with them all spaced out just enough where it looks like they're flying in a circle. And man, what a pain in the ass this was. Like, all month, I kind of just had my fingers crossed this would work, and if it didn't, there was a high probability I would have just lost my mind and erased my Instagram account and never showed my face in the ACBA community ever again. I needed this to work so bad. I am honestly not kidding. At least a little bit. Like, I think with this whole 20-page post, I would have scrapped all the work I had done if I failed to do this cover slide here as good as I wanted it to be. I wanted this to work so bad, dude. And after all of that, I finally came up with this shot, which, hold on, wait, I was able to make it work with some color correction magic. It turned into this. Someone suggested I have Unit 2 looking up, but it looked kind of goofy with the neck joint, so even if looking to the left here is kind of awkward as well, I like it more than my other options. And all things considered, at least with the setup I currently have access to, this is as good as I could get it. And I was so relieved to have this work out. It turned out very nicely. I love this photo. This is wonderful. I was very satisfied when I came to the end of this. I probably should have had a backup plan in mind looking back, but I truly did not. I had no backup plan. It either worked using the glass like that, or it was GG's. I had nothing else going on in my mind there. Okay, so that was page 1. Now I just need to do a page 2, which will bridge between Asuka seeing all the Avas flying above her and her actually fighting them. I got some shots of her looking up at them, as well as them landing. I got this big wide shot of her surrounded, a shot of the clock reading out 3 minutes, and some close-up shots of her sitting in the pod with the controls. And I tied it all together. I made some cutouts with text where she breaks down the math of how long she has to fight each one. And with that, all pages 1 through 20 are complete. I have them all done. Also, for both of our sake, I'm not gonna go through every panel and show you every bit of editing I did, but here's the general preset I used in Lightroom. I would just copy and paste this in and then edit it a little bit to fit whatever I was doing, but generally it was this preset. And yeah, that's everything. A few things I do want to say. A lot of the visuals for this were inspired from Super Saiyan 63 and also Toes and Knees. Those are the 2 main photographers I think of. Both of them have these really bright colors in their posts that make these older figures kind of work. You know, Toes and Knees stuff, like his Gundam and his Godzilla photos look like they came out of a cartoon show, and that was a big inspiration for what I was doing. And Super Saiyan 63 does a lot of shots of these old Revoltech Avas, and he really inspired the idea that, you know, yeah, I actually can do this with these old Revoltechs. Like, these figures fucking suck, but like, his photos are what I was like, okay, yeah, you can use these figures and make them look good in your photos. They're just terrible, by the way. Do not buy these things, okay? They fucking suck. They do not have wrist joints. I don't know, what were they thinking? Because older Revoltechs, like their Unit 1, that has wrist joints. Why don't the mass-produced Avis have wrist joints? You know how much easier some of this would be if they had wrist joints? Oh my goodness, I can't stand this fucking company. I love Revoltech though. Like, I tried really hard to only use Revoltechs for most of this post until the Figma at the end, but, you know, it was fun. It was a fun time. This was kind of meant to be an amazing Yamaguchi dedicated post right here until the end of it. So yeah, that was a very strong couple days of just being obsessed with this project, but I will say I am very proud of my hard work I put into this. Like, it was definitely something that I learned a lot while making, and I am very happy with the final product. It's one of those things where I had an idea in my head, I knew it would be difficult, and then I put in the effort, and it ended up being as good as the idea I had in my head. Like, I very rarely feel that, where an idea is as good in the final photo as it is in my head, but this is something I feel that with, and it's probably my favorite thing I made all month.
You know, I hit a point in this month where...
Hello, this is definitely Aaron Figures _ from the hit social media platform Instagram, bringing you October Day 20, Mayhem at Marvel. So amidst that week I was shooting the Evangelion series, I also shot this photo, which I skipped over at the time. Pretty much I wanted to recreate this comic book panel, and I do own both the Mezco Mr. Fantastic and the HasLab Galactus. Essentially, the idea was to use these blue rubber fitness bands, which worked out really well to create that stretch for Mr. Fantastic. And I also just used the setup from the previous Evangelion shots, and I just pulled up a new background on my monitor. However, I did run into a little bit of a problem. I was missing one of those horns that are on Galactus's helmet. I could not find it at all, and I didn't have the time to at all. And this shot had to be done today, and it was already midday. And while making this photo, I realized I already have a project that is so much more important that I have to get done. So I just had to make do with what I had, and I used one of those blue rubber fitness bands to try and cover up that part of the frame. Here's what the shot amounted to. I cropped out the right side and I screwed around with the colors for a bit. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking for it, you can for sure see that I was missing a part of Galactus, which is pretty unfortunate. It's really not up to my standard, especially since the reference is pretty cool and I could have made it a lot bigger of a photo if I had put more time into it. But this shot is a product of poor planning and cramming while focusing on another project. I had to do something for day 20, and I already prepared the rubber band, so I cranked this out as best as I could. At least the EVA series worked out though, and I survived getting every day in October. Not all October posts are created equally, and this only strengthens your craft and how you can work on taking even better photos in the future, I believe.
Okay, so fresh off of that whole photo shooting spree involving my day 23 post for Sacrifice Play, we're on day 24, got you covered. So I want to do kind of an alternate ending to that whole fight. There's this awesome manga panel of a bunch of them dive bombing her, and Unit 1 is standing over her as she's out of power and he's like protecting, and I think this would be a cool like alternate ending version of the story to shoot.
Okay, so right off the bat, I reused a lot of the setup from the previous photo series. I consider this to be kind of like a bonus content, like a special ending to that whole project. But I got Unit 1 standing over Unit 2 on this hill, just like the panel, but instead of all the Avas flying down, I just have this piece of glass for now. The idea is to stick all 9 figures onto this massive piece of glass and do a similar effect to that opening page with the main series, except vertical. One small issue I ran into is that the glass is too tall to fit on my desk standing straight up. And now, okay, do not try this at home. This is very unsafe. I am a trained professional, so I wedged the glass between the light on the ceiling and my desk, and this does genuinely work suspended in the air like that. Probably my most psychotic setup I've ever done. It does not get worse than this. Like, I really thought the entire time shooting this that the glass was gonna cave in and kill me. And yeah, now I can just tape all the figures up here, and oh man, I needed stronger tape. Unfortunately, all I had was this bright orange duct tape, so we're gonna have to make work with it. And I did make work with it. I spent a pretty annoying next hour just doing this. The main challenge was giving each of the Avas enough space where they would be able to stand out. Also, I had to be super careful. The more time I spent with this, the more I really thought it was gonna shatter under the pressure. To light something like this, I had the initial LEDs and one desk lamp, as well as this other desk lamp on the right side, and that's just to make sure the higher part up here gets enough light. Also, one of the Avas I held with my hand when I actually shot the photo. I put my camera on a timer. I simply ran out of space on the glass itself, so I had to do this. But yeah, that is everything going on with this setup. I ended up capturing 2 shots with different focuses. I needed one with Unit 1 in focus, and one with that center mass-produced Ava also in focus. And then I went over to Photoshop to stack them together, and I also edited out some of the orange tape at this point. And I even content-aware removed the line that you could see on the glass. Kinda just doing some general polishing and cleaning up here. Next, let's go over to Lightroom. So, very simple stuff, just a lot of clarity, vibrance, contrast. I needed this picture to look super dramatic and epic because it is. It's 9 big robots dive bombing another big robot. That's fucking sick. Also, a whole lot of masks, essentially just desaturating and raising brightness in the top half of the picture hides some more of the tape as well, which I then continued upon by taking it back into Photoshop, and I removed the rest of the orange tape and did a bit more cleaning up to end up with this final photo. And I think it turned out excellent. It was a pain in the ass to edit, and the setup was a safety hazard, but it turned out excellent. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters. And so after all of that, after a hard week of work, I looked over my work, I was satisfied with it, and I decided to get out of the studio for a little bit, just to clear my head, take a little break. However, when I came back to my studio, I discovered something truly awful, okay? My tripod had fallen over while I was gone, with my camera attached to it. The camera body itself was fine, but the lens was so damaged. The mount is popping off. I can see through it. It is so screwed up. It will not sit flat. It is completely popped off and disconnected.
So, okay, due to some other circumstances, I did not have all of my camera gear with me at the time, and I was really relying on this lens to shoot the rest of Octoyber with. I didn't have any other lenses. This was the only one I had to work with. And I didn't have a shot prepared for that day because I was burnt out from the previous week of shooting. I was expecting to just shoot a lot of these the day of with this lens, which is now broken. So naturally, I did what any sensible person would do, and I just taped my lens back together.
It is not perfect, okay? I can't adjust my aperture. I can't zoom in and I can't adjust focus. It's stuck at one fixed point of focus, completely zoomed out at f4, okay? That's the scenario that we're in. But it can do one thing. It can shoot photos. And that means we can take the photo for today and the show must go on.
Day 25, iconic opening. I'm thinking opening to a video game. I'm thinking Lego Batman, press start to continue. This is the opening scene I'm thinking of right here. This is what we're gonna do.
I managed to acquire the Lego Batman and Robin minifigures that were used in the original game. In the reference, Batman puts his hands on his belt, so I used some sticky tack to get Batman's arms out like this. I have to get real close because I can't adjust my focus, so if I can't adjust my focus, I have to adjust the setup around the focus that I'm stuck at. For this shot, I got to use all these cool building dioramas that I never shoot for some reason. For the framing, I mainly just used the intro from the game as a reference and moved stuff around in the camera until it matched. For the background, I'm using my TV, and I may have been able to come back from my camera issues, but if it was my TV that broke, I think I'd just be screwed. It's so handy for these types of backgrounds, having a massive canvas like this. I can never go back to the days when I had a 24-inch monitor that I was using as a background. I used Photoshop to dick around with the exposure on the background till I could get the moon to look how I wanted to on camera. I also edited some smoke into the background. I would have done it practically, but my smoke machine stopped working for no reason after that Hollow Knight shot earlier, and I still haven't fixed it. But yeah, I shot this photo. We fucking ball. I had to shoot this at f4. I would have liked to raise my aperture so you can actually see Robin, but I'm doing what I can, you know. One thing I did notice about this shot is that it's kind of dark, so in Lightroom I lowered my contrast and I raised my exposure. I even added a bright vignette around the edges. Also, a couple of other changes to the color grading, and to complete the edit off, I added the Lego Batman logo and text on top. This is the font I used, by the way. If you ever want to make stuff look like a Lego game, there you go. And considering the limitations, I'm pretty satisfied with this one. Probably the craziest comeback I've ever had in taking photos. Like, I really thought it was over, but we found a way.
Day 27, get the reference. Unfortunately, when I hear reference, I think of JoJo's. So we're gonna be doing a JoJo's photo of that panel where Jotaro is walking toward Dio.
Okay, so I have the Sass, Jotaro, and Dio posed up here, wide camera angle. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting here to actually make it look like the panel. Thankfully, my camera lens, despite being broken, is broken zoomed out, so no worries on that front. I will say though, this is one of those shots that really would have benefited from a sharper aperture, just like the previous one, but what can I do, you know? Now, to make this shot special, because it would be kind of boring if I didn't, I decided I was going to make the sound effects out of actual cutouts. So I got these printed at Staples, and the idea was to just hold them up using stands in the air, floating like you see here. This setup is truly absurd with all the stands, but, you know, it works. Like, look at that on the camera. That looks just like a manga panel. I did have to hold this one up, but other than that, it was pretty easy to pull off. Oh yeah, here's the lighting setup. As you can see, I had to tape on one of the stands to my lamp to get it floating here. But yeah, that looks solid. I like how this is coming along. Super minimal tweaks in Lightroom, just a bit more contrast, and I played with the color wheels a little bit. And I like this one. Nothing too ambitious, but the angle is pretty cool and dynamic, and I love how the sound effects turned out. I did the yellow background to match with that famous colored panel, but perhaps I should have done some actual buildings and dioramas. I don't mean to fall for the trap of making a worse photo in the sake of accuracy, but also if I did a more detailed background with a diorama, it'd get blurred because I'm stuck on fucking f4 aperture, though maybe I could have done a more detailed setup, but I kind of think the simplicity also works. I think overall this turned out nice.
Day 26, Colossal Creation. So I think of Attack on Titan. There's been all these awesome Attack on Titan photos I've seen lately with all the Rebel Tech figures. That shit is so cool. I'm thinking a shot of Ymir in the paths creating the Colossal Titans.
Okay, so Ymir is typically shown as this white ghost statue-looking person, very different style from the rest of the show. And the way I decided to adapt that into my photo is to just cut out the manga panel. I think the mixed media approach works really well for this. For reference, I'm taking how the paths looked in the anime, so I stood her up in this little pile of sand. And you know, it wouldn't be a figure photo without figures, so I grabbed these bootleg Colossal Titans that I already owned from last October, and I put them marching in the background. You know, I did need a Colossal Creation in the photo, after all. That shot I did last year is still one of my favorites. That was a special photo right there. I'm not trying to match it with this one, especially not with a broken camera. Over on Google, I grabbed this image of the tree that you see in the paths, and then I lit the shot from that side, almost like the light would be coming off of the tree. I shot this with the incandescent lighting setup that I talked about earlier in the video, just making everything super blue, and here's how that turned out. Over on the editing side, I cranked up the contrast and I lowered the saturation, and then I used the color wheels to add some more blue in addition to that. I also raised clarity a lot since I was kind of weird shooting a cutout as the subject of this, and I didn't want the shot to end up looking soft because the subject was made of paper, so I really tried to bring out the details with the editing here. And yeah, that's the whole thing. I quite like this one. It kind of looks like I shot a photo of a manga animation. Like if I was to animate a manga panel in After Effects, I would crop out the subject like this, and then I would add a background like this. It's kind of the same thing. Would be cool to try this again one day, maybe with a better setup, and I do think I would like to do that one shot of the huge foot. I think that would convey a better sense of scale. But for what I was able to do with the setup here today, I think this turned out nice.
Day 30, I Am Not a Monster. This is probably my favorite theme to come out of October, okay? I think this one is so cool because it's like, you could do like a character that looks scary, but is actually really friendly and nice. I was thinking maybe doing a one-piece shot with Crocodile holding the umbrella out for the dog. You could also do like a character who is a monster, maybe having some character development, which is that's what brought me to doing Vagabond. There's a scene pretty early on in Vagabond where Musashi is captured and hung from a tree, and he has to reflect on this violent life that he's lived up until now. It's a great sequence, and I would like to recreate that.
Okay, so the first thing I had to do here was get that main shot of Musashi hanging. I borrowed this yarn from my mother, thank you mom, and I tied Musashi hanging from it, and yeah, that looks perfect. I remember at the time I was very worried about doing this because I didn't know how I was going to do the tree, because I don't have any trees with branches like this, but I ended up chopping a branch outside and jamming it into my light box, and believe it or not, you can actually just hang someone from a tree. It really is that simple. It's not hard at all, actually. I really overcomplicated it in my head. Now, I really was not used to shooting on Diego's camera yet, so I spent about a half an hour just messing around to make sure this would work with the idea I had, but I did manage, so thank you again, Diego. This would not have been possible without you, and I truly do mean that. Now, I knew I wanted this to be a multiple panel, probably 3-page sequence with text, so I went to make sure I got a bunch of pictures of him hanging from different angles to use as panels. I really like this shot a lot. It looks just like the original panel, like big accuracy points right here. Also, some of these close-up ones are pretty nice too. Like, I like this one with his hands tied. One very common reoccurring visual in Vagabond is these black crows which represent death. And so I wanted to make sure I got those in this shot somehow. I ended up printing these out on printer paper just at home. I didn't go to Staples for this. You know, I wasted a lot of ink this month. Like, that could have gone toward a college application or something important. But no, instead I'm here taking my fucking figure photos. What a waste. And I'll be wasting even more ink as I plan to do all this text on tangible paper, which I will photograph, which was a tedious process of typing up all the text I wanted, and then an even more tedious process of cutting it all out. But I think it was worth it, because even if I'm still going to be cropping and editing all these cutouts into the shots in Photoshop, despite the fact it is edited, the text is on printed paper. It's a photo of a real object, and that gives it a pretty cool look where you could see the ink on every single letter. It sort of emulates what a physical manga looks like, even if you're just seeing seeing it on a screen, it kind of has that tactile and real feel to it. So yeah, after I photographed every single text bubble, it was time to put it all together. Over in Lightroom, I cranked up a shit ton of contrast, obviously no saturation, and I raised the clarity to enrich the details. Also on shots of text, I went with super low blacks and super bright whites. You know, the goal with these things is always to have a high enough contrast so the white parts in the background blend into the actual white background in Lightroom. It can't be an off-white, it can't be a gray, it has to be that perfect white color. Otherwise, it just doesn't look right. Once I had everything edited, I spent a while trying to come up with a kinetic feeling panel layout that would be fun to read. I decided on this look for page 1. I really like how the text bubbles go in this circular motion. It's very easy to follow in my opinion. Also, that shot of the sword is a reused image from that scrap shot I did for day 2, so it was kind of cool to finally include that somewhere. Also, really like how the birds look in the top left. I think that's a pretty cool shot. This page was a really good start to the post, and then for page 2, I wanted to feel impactful with the "you killed them" line, so I decided on just one image and 2 text bubbles to really let the words sink in. I do feel like this is the most detailed image I shot, so it was the perfect one to use on this page where it's meant to be the center of attention. And then I assembled the last page with our remaining 4 text bubbles, some cool masks for elements popping out here, like the rope going between panels or Musashi covering one of the text boxes. And overall, I love how this series of pages looks. It was very fun to make, and I think working on that Evangelion series earlier in the video got me to be a lot better at paneling. Like, that practice definitely made it so these things come to me a lot more naturally. Now I can easily make these very legible sequences of panels to tell a story. It always feels good to put in like an obsessive amount of work to practice something and then you see the results. Like that's very satisfying. Also, while I have done black and white photos before, it's usually just a colored shot that I put a filter on for fun, but I've never actually done a shot that's meant to be black and white from the get-go. Using a lack of color and negative space to tell its story is something you see a lot in the Vagabond manga. These images carry so much weight despite being in a medium that is monochrome. And here I was trying very hard to capture that, and I know I did it right because I truly cannot imagine this sequence in color. I can only see it in black and white. So yeah, I love this final result. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I think it turned out pretty great.
You know, I think everyone should take figure photos. Everyone needs something like this. Like, not only am I obsessed with doing it, which you've seen throughout the video, but I genuinely have a passion for it. I love it so much. Like, there's so many lessons I've learned from this hobby. Not even just like the patience and the creativity of setting up a shot and getting it to work, but also just a work ethic. I really wanted to get good at this. Really badly. I was spending hours every single day just practicing, because I wanted to see results. I wanted to see myself improve. And on top of that, you know, when I was younger, I used to be very stubborn. I did not have a teachable spirit whatsoever. But in taking photos, I realized I have to ask for advice. I have to ask them questions. I have to get feedback on my work. I have to be able to take criticism. I really have to thank this community and this hobby. That's where I learned those things, and they've helped me out so much in the rest of my life. Okay, so we've come to the end of October 2025, day 31, Unbreakable Bond. So throughout the month, I've done quite a few Evangelion shots. So for Unbreakable Bond, I think of Evangelion, I think of that unbreakable bond between mother and child you see over and over again in the series. The shot I want to do is that scene where Unit 1 reaches out to grab and protect Shinji in End of Evangelion. It's a great scene, and the manga panel for it is just beautiful. Like, I've always wanted to do a shot of this, but I never thought I could pull it off.
I knew this one had to be special. It is the last official day after all. This one really matters. So in the original work, the room is kind of bending inward toward the break in the wall with Unit 1 punching through. I have this tower diorama with a guardrail, which seemed like a good fit for this. I have it leaning forward against here. It's kind of unstable, but it does work. That is the same custom Shinji from earlier. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, My Custom Figures. I love you guys. For the break, I decided to use this sci-fi door from 78 points, you know, just to have a base for a hole in the wall. I'll add some rubble later. I used a closed pin at the top to connect it to a metal rod, which I connected to a lamp, and another closed pin at the bottom to connect it to the guardrail tower. I also built a room behind Unit 1 using more 78 points diorama pieces. This big front panel is being held up by this closed pin on this metal wire that is attaching these like two together, and it's also held onto this light. It's like tucked underneath there, and so that gives me a giant arm to hold it up. And then I also have another one down by Shinji, like holding that to the tower, which is obviously connected to the stool. So that whole thing is pretty much just holding this in frame, and that's also what Unit 1 is leaning on, because this is the version of the Dynaction that has bad legs, so it can't stand on its own. So it's leaning against this whole thing. Camera tripod is right here. The camera tripod is also holding the stool up because my stool is actually crooked. I'm not going to shake it to show you because everything will fall, but stool is crooked, so the tripod is holding up. And then I have this manga stacked here with this door kind of lying on it to fill in that left side of the frame. And then in the back here, I have these two pieces of foam that are leaning on each other. There's nothing really supporting them, they're just balancing there. And yeah, that's pretty much everything holding this shot together. Kind of a crazy setup, but it works, damn it. Also, I know the scale is gonna be off. Unit 1 should be further away and a way bigger figure, but if I force the perspective a bit, I think I can fudge it. Now, in the original scene, this is where Unit 1 breaks out of a frozen vat of red liquid. I believe it's coolant, if I remember correctly. So there should be red rubble rocks flying everywhere. Red rubble rocks, red rubble rocks, red rubble rocks. For this, I got some red paint, and I kind of just went to town on all sorts of rocks and debris pieces I had. I also made some parts out of a plastic bag. This was quite infuriating to get right. I needed it to look like Unit 1 was bursting out of a shattering red ice cube. I probably could have prepared a way better way of doing this if I had more time, but I was working with what I had. Honestly, I forgot the rubble had to be red until last minute, so that's why there was this commotion. I spent a good while just repositioning things and trying very, very hard to add enough red parts where I would be able to get the look I wanted. One trick you can do for this sort of thing is with lighting. I set up a red hue light behind the wall, which works wonders to make it look like the room behind the figure is even more red. Other than that, I got these two LED lights, one big desk lamp, and also my hue light died, so I keep squeezing that 1% battery remaining by forcing it back to life. And yeah, that's it. That's the entire setup. So many moving parts. What a mess to look at. But it's a well-organized mess. I would consider it to be more of a symphony of random elements barely held together, but it forms this beautiful photograph. I just love this shot, man. I love how it came together, even if I still have red paint on my floor to this very day because of it. Man, this is so good. For some editing, I upped the saturation and I messed with the hue on the red in Lightroom, wanted the colors to really pop out here. Also, just a bunch of masks adjusting things like how the lighting looks on the wall being dimmer, the back of Shinji's head, making the eye on Unit 1 glow, you know, just little stuff like that, but it ties the whole shot together. Like, here it is before I make those edits, and here it is after. It's like night and day. And for a final touch, I did a cutout of the text with Shinji saying mother, which I edited on top, and that is the perfect way to end this shot off. I never want to touch my camera ever again. I guess it's not my camera, actually. I have one more thing I kind of want to do for the month, but I don't know. We'll see when I wake up. I don't know if I can do it.
You know, I was on call with a couple friends talking about Octoyber, and we were all like, you know, 31 days is simply not enough. It's been a hell of a ride. We're gonna do day 32. It's been a hell of a ride. I sent a message to a bunch of people in the community just telling them about this. You know, it wasn't really like a collab, but like I wasn't trying to like invite or make like a set group of people that were doing it. Like I just kind of wanted as many people as they could to participate. And we got a bunch of awesome people that came out and shot photos for this. So thank you to everyone that participated in day 32. For my shot, I decided to do this one poster from End of Evangelion.
I have a diorama made by Dakota. Shout out Dakota, great work. They made this for me a couple of years ago. I found a version of the poster without Shinji and Asuka, and then I extended the blood water to make room for the figures. The composition is about as easy as it gets, just lining things up with the actual poster. Asuka's Revoltech hits this pose pretty well. What was not easy, however, is making it actually look like the tangible water was fading into the background. Now, I have done this picture before with the same diorama, so I thought I could just wing this like I did it before. It can't be too hard, but I was wrong. This was an insufferable process, and I'll spare you most of the details, but just know I tried a bunch of stuff, and eventually I just decided to remove the water entirely in Photoshop and just make it the red water on the background, but we'll get to that in a minute. Here's the lighting setup, minus those pink lights. Those did not make it into the final take. I adjusted the background a bit in Photoshop and adjusted it in frame, and when I was all situated, I took the shot. Here is the raw photo, and then in Lightroom Lightroom, I juiced the contrast, darker shadows, brighter highlights. I wanted the sky to be very dark and stand out, and I also wanted the ray head in the back to have kind of a glow to it. And I also raised the clarity so you can see that background a little bit nicer. Then over in Photoshop, I removed the water. It just wasn't working. I couldn't blend it. And without the water, it looked really nice. And then lastly, I added the logo. And you know, for something that is as last minute as it gets, I think this came together pretty nice. I could probably do it more accurately if I came up with a way of doing the water, and I maybe even did the shadows coming off their backs, but overall, I'm pretty happy with this as a fitting send-off for Octoyber. Oh man, currently it's March 1st. We're actually a quarter into the new year, and I'm still working on this video, but I'm finally done recording it. With this segment, I am done, so I love you all. I love Octoyber. This was a wonderful month of progress, and I don't know, I'll see you in the outro. Thank you for watching. Or in advance, though. In advance, I'm going to thank you for watching. This was so much fun.
And yeah, that is, without a shadow of a doubt, everything. That is all 32 days of the month done. Thank you to everyone that helped me make this. There's such a long list of people involved. I tried to credit people throughout the video, whether they made me customs, dioramas, they gave me advice. I thought their shot was a good inspiration, but you know, there's so many people. Thank you to the whole community that participated in working on this. And special thanks to the ACBA podcast and to Pon Cheesy for running these every single year. You guys put in a bunch of work. I always do really think of this as like the most alive time for the community. You know, I love figure photography, and I love this time of the year because we're shooting all sorts of photos. Everyone's taking their best photos. I think it's so much fun. So thank you for running this every single year. And that's just about everything, except I forgot one thing. I never went over the results. You know, they announced a winner, first, second, and third place winners. So I think to close this video off, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let that podcast segment roll. Like, I'm just gonna grab that out of the podcast, splice it up, and just put it at the end of this video. So until next time, have a good one.
What we got next?
Well, that's it. That's it for all the final round of judging. I think it's time. The winners, right? Yeah, I think it's time that we
winners, baby.
Let's talk winners, baby. This shot right here from Figure Mania show, dude. Harold.
Shout out to Harold.
Yeah, shout out to Harold, dude. That thing that rocked. This is great. Boog and David, you guys chose this for your top threes. You championed this for sure.
Yep.
Talk about it. What stood out? What stood out?
I mean, one thing that I always say about Harold's work is that that's often first of all, he's a great representative for multi-scale displaying, for perspective shots, and often his sets are pretty huge. So yeah, this was just really well put together from every perspective. The lighting, the framing, the little panel with Vin Diesel in there, and we talked about this a bit, but this was actually a play on something that P did in a previous tournament. But listen, if you're gonna
be inspired,
borrow an idea or be inspired by somebody else, and you do a shot that they did, or that's very similar to what they did, that should better be better.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely Trump P shot, which was also very, very good as well. But the light in here, effects, the framing, this shit is like super duper clean, man.
Yeah.
And Harold is a stickler for doing things practically and tangibly, and yeah, man, this shit is near perfect. It's just really, really well done.
Yeah, for me, I after looking at a lot of shots for Octoyber, I kept coming back to this one. It's the absurdity of it that makes me love it. But also recognizing that as absurd as this could probably happen in the Fast and Furious franchise. And the fact that he captured it so well, this could be like the poster for Godzilla versus Family. Like, I know that's what they would call the movie. And the shit, he just nails it. And we talked about it already, that capturing a quality multi-scale display is very difficult. And I think that Harold captures the best of both worlds. If you were to like put a bisecting line down the middle of this photo, to the left, he captures the best of what the Godzilla films have to offer, these newest ones. And to the right, right? Like he captures the best of what the Fast and Furious franchise is. And
100%.
And putting them together in a crossover shot that should not make sense, but makes all the sense in the world, makes this a quality photo.
But let's go here. This was Unbreakable Bonds by Super Saiyan 63. This is insane because he did an entire comic basically of Charizard fighting Mewtwo in that special and unlocking Charizard X. Super Saiyan 63 has a really great eye for just basically creating manga and comics with his photography. He's done like a couple of different series where he does this a lot, so he's definitely tenured when it comes to this. But it wasn't just just the sheer like volume of shots or just like how much legwork he put in, but like all these photos are good too. Like they're all great.
And for you to put together a series of panels like this, and every photo was hitting, like, you know what I mean? Like that's a lot of dedication. That's a lot of just meticulous kind of care, and like, this is really nice. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I was gonna say the exact same thing. It's just so good, dude. And like I said before, like in an event like Octoyber where you're posting something every day, just casually dropping a 12-page comic is insane.
Right.
Absolutely insane. And you know, it wasn't just him. I want to give another huge shout out to Aaron Figures, because he did something similar with Evangelion. He did another one. He did another comic panel. I know Super Saiyan 63 and Aaron Figure run in the same circles, so like you can definitely see like that. One of my favorite things about Octoyber is like that camaraderie amongst like friend groups where they're just like it's almost like a rivalry between like your like fellow photographer. You just want to like, you just keep pushing each other to do better every year, and it's crazy to see around the community.
The lighting and colors and everything here is so fucking nice.
This shit pops, bro.
Yeah.
Like, as someone who doesn't watch the Pokemon movies or specials, whatever, like how true to the source material is this? Is this 1-to-1? What is this, P?
I was just about to say, like, that was literally the next thing I was going to say, is like, it is very, very accurate to the source material. Down to like this pose is straight out of the special. This also, like, everything is just like, is literally ripped from the screen. It's so good, and like it's just really, really nice. There's no like other way to slice it. It's just a very just immense display of talent. Unreal.
What I found really dope about this is, like I just shared, I've never seen this special or know where this comes from, but I love the fact that I was drawn into this story via these photos, and I can tell exactly what happens here. The story was told perfectly, and so I love that. The other thing that I really love, and I know this is not intentional because he's like recreating things that have been done on a show or manga or whatever, but I think it's photo number 3 in this set. Is it 3 or 4? This right there. I love this shot of
the view.
Yeah, because what it reminds me of is NWA's album cover for Straight Outta Compton.
Incredible.
Where you get like that upward shot of them looking down at you. Bruh, that is just a really, I don't know if that's the angle it's supposed to be, but that's what it looks like to me. And each shot in his sequence just gets better and better and better. Doing this, I think what I said when you told me that he had done an entire comic run, I was like, there is no fucking way he did all these shots for one day's post of Octoyber.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It happens.
Crazy to me. So this is next level. This is just, again, raising the bar that much higher. And I don't know. Yeah.
It's very nice.
Excellent pick. I'm glad in our whole process we kind of double back and highlighted this, because we almost dropped the ball on this. This deserves to play. We go to number one, baby.
That's it. Number one. We talked about it. I feel like we talked about our top threes for a while, but when it came to number one, I feel like a lot of us just immediately gravitated towards this one. Like, not only just it placing in general, but I feel like a few of us were like, it's got to be number one, dude. It's just it's so good. It's so I'll just pull it up, dude. Number one for Octoyber, first place, October 2025, is this Spider-Man shot by Aaron Figures, baby.
Very nice.
This was
very nice.
So good. I think this evokes everything that's great about ACBA. Down to cutout work, like unique and expressive angles, just everything, man. Like this like, yeah,
everything. Background, working the f-stop right, it's just, yeah, man. It's kind of like a masterclass and subtlety, but still like having a big presence though, like, you know what I mean, like,
yeah,
in terms of like effects and whatever. With the second and third place entries, this really has no real effects like that, but still really, really buttoned up and sharp and contained and just really nicely framed up, and it's an excellent piece, man.
He went on a generational run this October because he had a lot in the top 16, dog. Spoiler alert.
So yeah, he had a couple.
He went fucking crazy.
For me, I guess I look at this photo and I still have questions about how he did it, which is what I love. To me, if we needed to select a photo to explain to people what ACBA is, this would be a great representation of the brand. And also for me, I love, not just in October, but even just like scrolling through the page every day, I love pictures that pull me into that world. And this, to me, has to be what it feels like to live in New York, in the MCU or in the 616. And at any moment, just fucking out of nowhere, you look outside and Spider-Man is clinging to your window outside of your apartment that you live in. And it's like, oh shit, Spider-Man is on my window. Like, that's literally what this feels like right here, that I'm going to my desk in my office and the Spider-Man is in the middle of fighting Green Goblin and he just clung to my window before he like flips off to continue fighting. That's how immersive this shot is, and on every level. And to me, this is damn near perfection, ACBA perfection. So, if we had a museum, this would be, I ain't gonna say it's our Mona Lisa, but it's a pretty fucking good shot.
Yeah, it belongs in it, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like J. Jonah Jameson's worst nightmare right here.
I know.
Aaron is in the chat right now. He wanted to give a shout out to his guy TJ for doing the actual drawing that's on the desk there, which is also, again, adding to the whole like immersiveness of this. Like, this is the desk of someone who loves the wall crawler and Spider-Man just popping in like this is pretty dope. For people who don't follow Aaron, do you want to shout out his tag on IG?
Yeah, Aaron Figs, Aaron Figs on Instagram, baby. Check him out. Check out Super Saiyan 63. Check out Figure Mania Show. Check out everybody we highlighted as well. Unbelievable, dude. What a great year for October this was.
Yeah,